Okay, just a minute. Matt, we are live.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the July 20th, 2020 regular meeting of the Narragansett Town Council. I'm going to call our meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
for
which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with justice.
justice for all.
Man, born and unborn.
All right, our first item, I believe I'm going to go to Councilwoman Lawler. She has a request.
Thank you, Matt. I asked that Mr. Tierney prepare a statement along with Mr. Wright to talk about the beach operations over the past weekend, some changes that were made, parking and that type of thing. I know the town's very interested.
Oh, good evening, everyone. This weekend, Narragansett Police, I'll go over the beach and the whole weekend very quickly. This weekend, Narragansett, along with other coastal communities in Washington County, in cooperation with the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management and the Governor's Office and State Police, coordinated a targeted approach in an attempt to curb and deter large crowds flocking to the communities. The governor had reduced the available parking at Scarborough Beach from 75% maximum capacity to 25% maximum capacity. Each community instituted new parking regulations with increased fines as a deterrent to folks arriving and congregating in the communities. This entire collaborative effort was in response to an uptick in COVID-19 positive test results in the state. And this is a step to lessen the potential of spread in our own community. We increased security and staffing at the beach, opened the beach an hour earlier to relieve congestion, stopped admittance once capacity was reached in accordance with the COVID-19 operations plan that Parks and Recreations and Steve had prepared and presented to the council. We increased police patrols and parking enforcement, which resulted in over 500 parking tickets being issued. Over the weekend, I received positive emails regarding beach operations about the professionalism of the staff, the cleanliness, and how they felt comfortable there. It was nice to see that. And I applaud the beach staff for their dedication and their professionalism at all levels of beach operations. We also received thanks from people in the community. I received several calls regarding the emergency parking regulations that were put in place. And I didn't hear one complaint about it. They thought it was good. At Town Hall, we've just hired 3 part-time customer service representatives to serve as greeters for Town Hall visitors. The greeters will take your name and contact information, the date and time of arrival and departure, temperature with infrared thermometer, followed by the 5 Q&As for COVID-19. Your destination at Town Hall, where you're going, and issue a visitor pass. That's the way we're going to be doing it, effective Monday, July 27th. And it's for the protection of the employees and for the visitors who come in there. We're operating at a highly efficient level. Collections in the tax assessor's office and transactions in the clerk's office and in the building official's office are above last year's rates. But we are going to continue to encourage folks to utilize the online payment options, use the Dropbox, Town Hall, and make appointments if you can. It'll work even better. But the purpose of all of this was to maintain contact tracing in the event of a COVID-19 transmission. I would like to bring one thing up. Since I mentioned the great work being done at our beach, I would like to introduce Steve Wright, Parks and Recreations Director, so that he can recognize 3 of your lifeguards that no doubt had saved a man's life on Monday last week. 30 years in law enforcement, there's no doubt in my mind if those lifeguards didn't pull this man from the water, he would have perished. I was there that day when they pulled him out. So Steve, could you please brief the council and our residents about this?
So good evening all. On Monday, July 13th at 5:19 p.m. at Chair 5, just around Chair 5, lifeguards Ted Evans and Christina McPhillips pulled a 27-year-old male from the water who was found to be unconscious. The man appeared to have a seizure while in the water. A large wave pulled him under. When he came up, he was shaking on one side with his eyes rolling and not responding. Water Safety Director Mike Florio responded to the scene and did additional first aid, and he was placed on the John Deere Gator and responded to the Narragansett Fire Department paramedics who were also on scene, and further treatment was taken to South County Hospital. Due to their extensive training, discipline on the chair, and reaction time, this young man survived this terrible day at the beach. Mike Florio has 27 years as a lifeguard. Ted Evans has 4 years as a lifeguard. Christina McPhillips, who I believe is with us tonight, is also 4 years of a lifeguard. I are extremely proud of Ted, Christina, Mike, and the entire lifeguard staff, along with Bill Eckert and his entire staff at the Narragansett Town Beach. I'm sure you all know this has been extremely challenging time at the Town Beach this year, particularly during COVID-19. So these lifeguards have been day in and day out working tirelessly every single day. This past weekend, we opened up an hour early, as Jim had mentioned, and they've been working about hours. This young man, this 27-year-old young man, they saved his life, and I give them so much credit. They did a tremendous job. And again, it's been their hard training, their background, their discipline, and I can't say enough about them. So credit to those young people on our beach.
Thank you very much. That's great. If I could, I'd like to address the council and the community on just one item, which I think falls under announcements, if you'll indulge me. Do I have permission to go forward with that?
Of course, yeah.
Thank you. After a recent meeting at the Maury Lugents Memorial Library, I talked to some folks there and afterwards, and I also received some phone calls and emails and read a letter that was published in the Independent. I'd like to address some apparent confusion that clearly exists in the community regarding my role in the library. The Library Board of Trustees is appointed by the Town Council. The Town Council approves a budget appropriation for the library. As Town Manager, I attend all Town Council meetings as it's part of my job. Additionally, as Town Manager, I don't have any involvement in the management of the library. This is the job of the Director and the Board of Trustees. To be clear, I do not hire staff. I do not fire staff at the library. I do not determine the hours of the operation of the library. I do not determine salaries. I do not determine benefits. I do not determine any programming. I do not determine expenditures. I'm not a member of the Board of Trustees. I don't have a vote regarding the final disposition of what happens to the library. The Town Finance Department does act as a pass-through for the funds for the library, and we're required to process expenditures that are approved by the Board of Trustees and the Director. The library, just like the school department does with schools, they run their entire operation, not me. I had a brief discussion with Library Director Patty Arkwright last week, and she agreed that some folks don't understand the town manager's role. I just think it's important to clear it up after the phone calls and messages and comments that were made last week after that meeting. And, I think that clears it up. Thank you.
All right, and thank you both to both you and Steve Wright from Parks and Rec for letting us know about what was going on. It's also at both the beach, and I want to thank the 3 lifeguards who saved that drowning swimmer. So, and I know we're also going to be discussing some of this at item number 23, I believe, at the end of the agenda. So thank you, thanks Steve, thank you Jim.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on then to our consent agenda. Is there any item that one of the council members would like to remove from the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And make the motion. Jill Lawler.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, all in favor. We'll start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 6 is a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the voter initiative to amend the town charter regarding section 1-3-1 entitled Powers of the Town to be placed on the ballot for the November 20 general election. Is there a motion?
I'll make it.
Jesse Pugh makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Patrick. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Davis just to explain what we're doing with item 6, and generally it's going to apply to items 6 through 9.
Matt, can you turn your microphone up a little bit? I don't know. If,
I'm sorry. I think I might. Is that better?
yeah, much better. Thanks.
I think I'm back in the background a little bit.
Yep.
All right. Okay. There we are. Mr. Davis.
Yes. So as everyone knows, throughout the past 6 or 8 months, there have been a number of voter initiatives which were approved or deemed to be legal or valid by the town council. The process then commenced with the petitioner acquiring the signatures. The minimum number of signatures having been obtained, submitted to the town clerk then working with the various departments at the state level, validated and approved the signatures. And what you see before you tonight, the 4 voter initiatives have met all the requirements and satisfied the thresholds to be placed on the ballot coming up. Tonight before you is really a formality to vote to put those on. They have all the requirements have been satisfied, and as such should be placed on the in November.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for initial council commentary on that. This is, as everyone knows, a question was presented. The number of signatures needed to force it to be on the November ballot in 2020 was obtained in this case. And so we're looking then, this is now the process by which we ask the Secretary of State to put it on the ballot. I'm going to ask if there's any initial commentary from the council, starting with Mr. Lima.
So in reading this in shall section 1-3-1 of the town charter entitled, it says that powers of the town be amended to add a provision that the town of Narragansett may only sell property after receiving approval from the town's voters at the next scheduled election. The problem I have with this is just saying sell property. Everything that the town owns is property. A vehicle is property of the town. A lawnmower, property of the town. So every time we want to sell something, whether it's at DPW, Parks and Rec, or any place else, because it says property, it doesn't say real estate, it says property. We're going to have to wait till the next election to let the voters vote on letting us sell property. I don't think there's enough information in this for me to be able to tell my constituents or the taxpayers of this town what the definition of sell property is and what this is actually going to cost the taxpayers in doing this. Because there's going to be a cost. And do the taxpayers want that cost? And I think that should have been presented along with this so that if you signed the petition or didn't sign it, you knew exactly right to the detail what this was all about. So it's the only question I have. And I just want the taxpayers to understand what it's actually saying, how I'm looking at it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Murray.
Yeah, Mark, I had a question. I mean, we have to put it on the ballot. We just, by not voting for this, we're violating the charter, correct?
I believe there's really a choice but to put it on the ballot at this point. I wasn't anticipating, not having sufficient votes to put it on the ballot. It needs to move forward and go on the ballot. Now, I wholeheartedly agree with Rick. And I think we had these discussions when this voter initiative came up, that that property was broad. The intent may have been real property, but there was an opportunity for the petitioner of this voter initiative to find that, to help form the way the question would be asked. But that did not happen. So we were left with the language that was submitted as the voter initiative. We don't have the luxury of determining what may have been in somebody's mind or what the intent was. So agree. I think we had talked about it. North Kingston has a similar provision, and they will tell you they have warehouses full of old furniture and old computers, and it's a nightmare because they can't sell anything but for every 2 years. But having said that, we pressed upon the importance to the person who filed this petition to help us craft language early on, but this is the language we were left with.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we gotta put it on a ballot and let the folks decide. But I will be, whatever ballot initiative this is, I will be campaigning against this. So, yes to put it on, no to support it. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Yeah, so, we have 4 of these tonight. Hopefully we don't have this discussion every time, since, like Mark said, this is really a formality. It's not an endorsement or a rejection of the initiative. It's just the way it's laid out in the charter. It's our duty to validate ballot petitions, and they go on the ballot. So that's really all it is. Whether we like it or not, that's not really the question. So thanks.
Ms. Lawler.
So I agree with both Rick and with Mark. It's too bad that I believe this was Mr. Hames's ballot initiative, that he did not make it so that we can have it be real property, but it's not. It's property. So I agree with both Rick and with Mark Davis and with Patrick to campaign against this like crazy.
This item, again, the language that was circulated that received 1,203 signatures, defining the powers of a town may only sell property after approval by the town voters. So that's what was signed. We can't change what 1,203 people signed on to. This is not our role to amend it. And it's an important to make the distinction about the procedural step of moving this forward to the Secretary of State's office for placement on the ballot versus whether or not you're for or against a particular initiative. This initiative would force the town vote before the sale of property, meaning a townwide vote on sale of any property, real or personal. That being said, I'm going to go to the public, and as I think Mr. Pugh mentioned, again, we have deadlines on these, so these are important. I'm asking everyone to be very brief in their comments on these, and because we do need to get these to the Secretary of State. So I'm going to go to our moderator and ask him to call in the members of the public.
First one is Stanley Wojciechowski.
All right, Stanley, name and address for Terry Donovan, please.
Stan Wojciechowski, Boston Neck Road, Narragansett. This seems so long. The council, they rely on the staff, the finance director, the assessor. They have all kinds of experts they rely on to make decisions on what and when to sell. And for us to expect that a voter out there, some voter who maybe never had any finance or real estate background at all, is out there telling the town what it can do. We've got, I just don't have any confidence in the normal voters. Half of the voters don't even know the council people who are running. Never mind the details on buying and selling property. This is so wrong and so unprofessional. I would just wish it would stop right here. But I understand it's going forward, but we really need to stop these kinds of actions and let a council who know what they're doing and our experts give them the information they need to conduct business. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask our moderator who we have on next.
Next is Win Hames.
All right, name and address, please, for the record.
Win Hames, 30 Wood Avenue, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Mark, if you would like to put a limit on that, I wouldn't have any objection. For instance, if we said real property at $250,000, if that's allowable, I have no objection to it. But if we have to go forward the way it is signed, then it can go forward the way it is signed. So, I mean, you can look at that, you can let me know, but I don't have any objection to doing that.
All right, thank you. I just, when it left the sponsor's hands and the signatures get collected, it no longer is the sponsors. It's 1,203 people item now. So that's
fine.
Yeah. And who else do we have?
Next is Dr. Alba.
All right, name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I don't know if there's any way to put next to this initiative that it's not representative of real property, just to clarify that for people who are going to be voting, because people might automatically think that it's all kinds of property, that wouldn't not make sense. I know this was brought up in North Kingstown. I guess it was spoken to earlier. And I mean, that is ridiculous. It's I think the reason why we were talking about the consideration of real property is we don't want to give the town council carte blanche to be able to sell a huge building that is entrusted into the town of Narragansett on their own. We got to have a system of checks and balances. So I can understand why something like this was drafted, but on the other hand, to say property to me is ridiculous. It's too generalized. It's got to be stated real property, and I don't know if you could put that like an asterisk next to this stating this is not real property, it's all property. I don't know if there could be any kind of adjustment. If not, I agree with the sentiments of everyone who spoke that it should be voted down.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public? I'm going to ask our moderator.
Nope, that's it.
All right, final thoughts from the council. Mr. Lima.
No, I mean, I think people getting the message on why we don't have these. Again, there's a cost behind it. You elect people for 2 years, regardless whether it's selling or whatever. It should be more about buying. You shouldn't be allowed to go in the checkbook and buy what you want, never mind sell. So, that's all I have to say.
Mr. Murray.
Yeah, the charter change should have been a super majority to buy and sell property. Would be a 4-1 vote instead of a 3-2 vote. So that would have been the simpler solution instead of going through a voting process to purchase or sell property. So, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It would be a very cumbersome process if this was to pass. But again, it's the messiness of democracy. So we'll see what the voters do when this is on the ballot. Tonight, we have to vote yes to put it through, but that's basically it.
And Ms. Lawler.
I'm still in agreement that we have to have the electric vote this down in November. Is just way too broad. And I just actually want to add into one thing as far as democracy. We've got to all remember that we are a representative democracy. So the elected officials are the people that are voted in every 2 years, and we are the ones that vote. So it's like that for a reason. And just want to remind that we're not a true democracy, representative democracy.
Thank you. And in terms of, again, this language, it's not changeable. As I said, once the sponsor, it leaves the sponsor's hand, 1,203 people didn't vote for it, signed this petition asking for this to be on. So we can't, those signatures were obtained with that language. So this is substantively, I think this ties the hands of the town council to make decisions on behalf of the voters. And I don't think it remedies a lot of people's concern about what happened with the library. In fact, it's going to apply to, it's prospective. It doesn't apply to the IGA Belmont building at all. So it's unfortunate, but it is, at this point, we're at a procedural step, putting it before getting it to the Secretary of State. All right, with those thoughts, I'm going to call the vote on this. So just say your name and your vote as I go down the list, starting with Mr.
Richard Lima, aye, but I will be campaigning against this fully.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye. Ditto.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, I be campaigning against this.
All right, Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 7 is a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the voter initiative to amend the town charter, adding a new section to establish a recall procedure to be placed on the ballot for the November 2020 general election. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I guess I'll make it.
Second.
Jesse Pugh has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Murray is the second. Mr. Davis, I'm going to come to you, but we've kind of gone through the procedural. If you want to just briefly touch on the substance of this, but I think we all now have had the conversation with item 6.
Yeah, Matt, I don't think there's anything to say about the procedure. It's the explanation follows for the next 3. But it may be helpful if you read the specific language that that's being put forth.
Okay. For the recall, you want me to read the whole ballot?
And I would just read the lead in, and then the recall one, you can refer to the procedures that follow, which are very
right. And I will just for the record for Terry, on the you know what, I'll do that later. All right, so item 7 is whereas the Narragansett Town Council orders the following questions to be placed in the ballot general election to be held on November 3rd, 2020. And then there's essentially a 4-part procedure. It's asked, shall Article 1 of the town charter be amended to add a new section to establish a procedure whereby an elected official can be removed from office by a recall petition prepared and approved by electors of the town of Narragansett, the text of which would be as follows. And again, I'm not going to go through the lengthy text, but based on advice from our council, the text will be appearing on the ballot. So substantively, if the council doesn't want to do that and just wants to have a summary question, this is the time to make that point. If you don't want to, you all have your blue sheet in front of you or you're online, you can see the list of the whole process. But that's, if each person wants to weigh in on that, but there is a specific recall process that's delineated here. So I'm going to go just to initial thoughts from the council members. Mark, is that sufficient? Would you like me to say more for the record? I lost you.
I think that's appropriate, Matt. I don't think you need to go through the specifics.
Okay.
Yeah. Have access to it.
All right, and I will read the shorter ones for the next 2, just so they're on the record. All right, I'm going to just, if there's initial commentary from council members, Mr. Lima.
So on this particular petition, I just want the people at home to understand that you're elected for a 2-year position. After 6 months, if you get your signatures, you can be removed. Again, that can continue on and on. If they don't like the person that gets in on the next, somebody else can petition. So again, this is just a matter of, if you don't like who got elected and you can get enough signatures and you can step into this and just keep it going, you can just try to tie things up. And the cost, again, nobody wants to put the cost of what an election would be to do something like this. So how much cost does a town taxpayer want to take on? Those are the things that I wish people would just come out when they do these and say, this could cost X amount of dollars to the taxpayer. I am hoping once again that the taxpayers read these very carefully and vote them down. Vote for who you want and take that person for 2 years. Most of these are in areas where if you have somebody in a 6-year term, yes, this would probably work well. But in a 2-year, you're barely in the door. 6 months goes by. By the time you get the person out, there's probably only a year left. It's crazy. And what? At the taxpayer's expense. More money out of the taxpayer's pocket. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with a recall provision. Certainly, if voters' remorse is so great, then there's a process to remove an individual. I really don't have a problem. I rarely is this ever used, a recall provision in any town charter or mayor's office or any office that has a recall. So I'm okay with this one. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Yep, again, really just a formality as it's a valid petition. I totally understand the reasoning for this one. You know, if someone campaigns on a certain promise and then turns out they're not going to honor that promise, there should be a mechanism to, you know, have that person considered to be removed. So I get it.
Miss Waller.
So this will be another one that I'll be campaigning against, just to add on to the statements that Rick made initially. So you need to wait 6 months for someone to be in office to call for a recall. You have 60 days then to collect signatures and give them to the Board of Canvassers to authorize. And then there's 75 days before election. So we're really looking at an election, and I believe the cost was last time we heard maybe $30,000 to have a special election, to have someone be knocked out of office and back in for a period of 9 months. If we take a look at what this past year has been, even talking about these ballots, it's slowed government down to a snail's speed. We don't need to do that. Rick is absolutely correct. We are in for 2-year terms. Vote for who you want, have a 2-year term, and then vote again. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the record, this had 1,220 valid signatures. And again, procedural vote here on moving it forward. I'm going to ask our moderator if anyone from the public has anything to say on this.
First is Stanley Wojciechowski.
All right, Stan, name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, Stanley Wojciechowski, Boston Neck Road, Narragansett. You know, sometimes it takes, we get a new job, sometimes it takes at least 6 months to get to know what you're doing. You know, I mean, you have ideas and you have plans, but you get no input. After you get the job and you start working at it, there's no input. There's a more professional input there that you didn't realize was there, and you might change your mind. You know, you should be open to change your mind with new data that's scientifically better or financially better, and you should be willing to change your mind when it's appropriate for financial reasons or whatever reasons. You should have that availability. Now, I might compromise and say, okay, after a year, if somebody seems to really be unprofessional and can't make a decision, well, we can start it there, like you say. But you know, like you start in the year, it'll take a year to get through. It doesn't do any good. Like you say, vote them out. You'll vote them out the next time. But to let somebody get taken out after 6 months when they're just getting going and just learning is wrong. This is just wrong. This is unprofessional in nature to pursue throwing somebody out without giving them time to learn what to do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Master Moderator. Who we have next from the public?
Next is Win Hames.
All right, name and address, please, Mr. Hames, for the record.
Win Hames, 31 Avenue, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I think what we're forgetting is, and I think, Jill, you mentioned, let me see if I get here. Where did I put that? True democracy. Okay, true democracy. 70% of the people voted for this library move. Yet these initiatives are stemming from your refusal to honor the will of the people. Okay, and that's simply it. If you'd have done what the people asked, we wouldn't be here now. We would probably have a new library in town. People would have been happy and we could have moved on. Okay? You're the ones that created these initiatives. Realize that. Nobody else. You did it by ignoring the public vote in this town. Thank you.
And is there anyone else?
Next is Dr. Alba.
All right, name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I think I understand what Stan was saying with respect that sometimes things change, but if you have a solid, there's certain initiatives which people should stand up for and have research when you're running for office, a strong platform, which these are foundation principles. I mean, I'm sure there might be some extreme exceptions which might make some things to change. But one thing I liked about Stan when he was on the town council is we know Stan is frugal. He watches our pennies and he's consistent. That's not going to change with Stan. So we know what you're buying. When I voted for Stan for town council, I know the gentleman. I thought he did a great job. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to. For some reason, he had to leave. I don't understand why, but I like Stan a lot. He's a very intelligent man. He's an engineer. He gives a charity to high schools every year. God bless him. He cares about his family. I love him. A church-going guy. But I think if the people feel that our leaders basically are in office and are not following the will of the voice of the people on our platform, which the people have voted on, then, I think there is, when I saw the 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours of testimony, we weren't an angry mob. We were just concerned about our library. We wanted our library. So we're going to have this vote next time, and we're going to see the will of the people will be heard. And like I said, I feel if you have people who are in office who are going to blatantly not listen to the will of the people, then there should be some kind of provision to say, you know what, our representative democracy is not being represented, and there's got to be some kind of action. And sure, there might be a cost, Mr. Lima, but it might be 2 or 3 people that might have to leave at one time. So this is just a consideration. So thank you for your time.
All right, is there anyone else from the public? I'm going to ask Mr. Collins.
That's it.
All right, so we're going to have.
So Matt,
council.
before we go on.
Yeah,
if I
final
could.
thoughts from the council. So you're up, Rick.
Yep.
You're up.
So Mr. Hames spoke about 70%. Look, it's 67.9%. I wish the people would get the numbers and the facts right. It's been published. You don't have to tweak it in the manner that you want. Okay. And they voted for a bond. That's what they voted for. Said nothing about the Belmont building. So let's get that right. And if you wanted to vote for that particular item, then that's what you should have voted for right there. Did you see the signs at the polling booth? That's what they said. So if you wanted, vote for the Belmont for. If that's what you wanted, those were the people you should have voted for. It was simple. They were running up to you, asking you for the vote. They were at all the polls. It didn't happen. So let's get beyond that. These initiatives are put in because you're trying to run negativity in this town. We're not running it. You're running it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murray.
I'm good.
Mr. Pugh.
All set. Thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
Just 2 things. As far as the claim of the will of the people, well, we saw the will of the people in 2018. This council was elected. So I just have to bring us back to that point. And as far as the bond, we voted for a bond. That was the ballot question, was for a bond. Now the advertisement, that still remains a mystery. How that ad was changed and it's different from the bond, I don't know. But Narragansett, I sure hope we find out someday. Thank you.
And that's why I'm encouraging everybody to look very closely at the language, all 4 of us here, because if there's problems with this language, this is the opportunity to express that because of that gap that we had last time. Vote on a referendum for borrowing. is an authorization to borrow. It's not a mandate to spend. So it's very important for everybody to realize, and many bonds get in the 65 to 70% range. It's important to note that in 2012, our road bond got around 80%, and it was much more expensive of a bond. It was 17 million. So one thing we need to look at is those authorizations to borrow, and we may have trouble with that particular borrowing with the road bond because of the money that we spent on Corona. But that being said, this is, I think I said for the record, the number of signatures. So I'm going to call the vote on this, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima. I will vote yes on this, but I am definitely campaigning against this one as well.
Mr. Murray,
Aye, Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, I will campaign aggressively against.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. All right, we went a little bit over on our public hearing, but I wanted to finish the discussion on that. So we have a 8 p.m. I'm going to look for, first of all, I'm going to ask to see if our stenographer is ready before I actually call this motion. Mark, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, are you set up?
I am. Thank you very much.
We can hear you. Well, welcome. All right, I'm gonna read the motion right now. A motion to open and hold a public hearing on the issue of amending Narragansett's harbor management plan, addressing changes to the timeframe for the mooring field operations in the South Ferry, Anawan, and Harbor of Refuge fields. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, I.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. In terms of presentation on this, I'm going to ask if our harbor master, Mr. Kevin Connors, is there, if he wanted to speak briefly to this, or the chair of either he or the chair of the Harbor Management Commission to give us a brief summary of this. Are either of you out there or want to speak to this?
Yes, Matt. Kevin Connors here.
How are you? All right, so Kevin, I'm just going to ask, nice to hear you. I'm going to ask, just when you do this, because this is the public hearing, just try to speak as slowly as you can for the stenographer. And so I'm going to turn it over to you. Mark, do we need to swear Kevin in as the presenter?
I do not think so.
All right, so Mr. Connors, why don't you go ahead and walk us through this, please?
Yes, those three areas are very, they're oceanfront. They're very rough areas for moorings in the town. And our mooring season ends December 1st throughout, and these moorings need to be winterized. The commercial vendors that actually winterize these moorings don't want to go out there after December 1st. Now, they obviously could do them sooner, but people keep their boats on until the very, and that's a problem, where when they finally take their boat off, the mooring never gets winterized, and they'd rather pay the town's fine and have it winterized. The way our inspections go is every 3 years, it's counting that the chain is mud for 6 months of the year, not working up. We've had past couple of years, several boats at the Bay Campus, and even last year at Breakwater Village that have broken free from their moorings and gone to the beach. And most end up in 30-yard dumpsters when it's done, with some pollution. And so this is just cutting the mooring field time short just by 1 month. And any prudent mariner shouldn't have their boat out there at that point anyway. Hope I didn't go too.
No, that's great. And this is two-part. I want everyone to be aware of when we come to this, unless I'm speaking out of turn, that there's the harbor management plan aspect to this and the ordinance aspect to it, and both of which we're addressing. Is that correct, Mr. Connors?
Yes, it is. Yep.
All right, great. What I'm going to do is, unless anyone from the council wants to speak, because it's a public hearing, I'm going to go directly to the public. So, Mr. Holland?
And
Do
we
you
have
have
nobody
anyone?
from the public currently.
No from the public. All right, that being said, then I will look for a motion to close this public hearing.
Jill Lawler, so moved.
And a second.
Richard Lima, second.
All right, I'm gonna roll call on that. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. We have this both of these are for items 13 and 14. So the actual voting on these is going to come at that point. So with that being said, Mark, unless you think otherwise.
I think that's fine, Matt.
Okay. So then what I'm going to do is we'll move on to the scheduling motion. It's a motion to schedule a public hearing for a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance prohibiting more than 3 college students from occupying a dwelling. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, discussion on this. This is going to be on for August 17th at 8 p.m. As everybody knows, this item is still at the planning board level. All right, is there anybody from the public? Go ahead, Terry.
Nope, go right ahead.
Did the steno get that date? Is what I want to make sure.
Yes.
Good. Okay, that's important. All right. All right, if there's anyone from the public that would like to speak, you'll have to be sworn in by Mr. Davis. And when you are sworn in, when you state your name and address, please spell your first and last name.
Yes, first one is Roberta Grogan.
This
All
is
right, well,
scheduling.
welcome. This is just a scheduling motion, but go ahead, name and address for the record, and spell your name for the record.
Roberta, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lawler. My name is Roberta Grogan, Grogan.
Roberta, would you raise your right hand?
Yes, sir.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just really have one question going into this. I heard Mr. Lima and Ms. Lawler speak earlier of full disclosure with regard to the motions for all of those the
Initiative.
the new initiatives. So that being said, and having sat through 3 meetings related to the ordinance, I think it is very important for full disclosure to hear the numbers related to the enforcement of any potential ordinance. We've not heard that. That did not come up at the planning committee. At the planning committee, they were not even sure which department would be charged with enforcing the ordinance. So in a year wherein the board has definitely, the council has encountered budget challenges, knowing the numbers related to the enforcement of this new ordinance, when an ordinance is on the books that could be enforced as is, would be something that I know would mean a lot to the people that I heard speak at a very lengthy planning committee meeting. So those numbers are something that really impact your budget, the impact to the taxes, the impact to the very limited resources you have right now. I mean, I think it's awesome that this weekend you encountered that level of service and that level of very important here at the beaches. So that level of enforcement and which office is going to enforce it and the cost attributed to that is something that has been asked by multiple entities multiple times related to this. So if you guys could provide that going into it, it would be awesome. And I love Narragansett, by the way.
All right, thank you. Is there another speaker? I'm going to ask our moderator.
Yes, next is Stanley Wojciechowski.
All right, name and address and for the record, Stanley, and you're gonna have to spell it, please.
Stanley Wojciechowski, Stanley, Wojciechowski, Wojciechiowski, Boston Neck Road, Narragansett.
Stanley, would you please raise your right hand?
Yes,
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Stan.
I don't think we ought to set a specific date at this time, because I think the planning board experts that are going to provide us with the details on what to do and the right way to go, I would assume that they would recognize that we have a noise problem and we need enforcement by the police. And one of the best ways to get the police to continue and improve their enforcement is probably getting to fines that would be like $10,000 per event. And that would include the cost of enforcement to be placed there. So we should look for cost of enforcement, get the police involved, and it's not necessary to deal with property rights in order to get the kids quiet. And I'm not saying kids, college kids. I'm saying this is a drunk, noisy, drunk problem, not a college kid problem, but noisy, drunk persons. And we should specifically target those noisy, drunk people with a real high fine, and that fixes it. 3 people can cause, in fact, 1 student can have a party and cause just as much trouble as 4, 5, and 6. So we shall not schedule this till we get some expert input from the planning board. Please wait until you hear from them before you schedule. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the scheduling, you think is premature. Is there a next person? I'm going to ask our moderator.
Yes, there is. Paul Zonfrillo.
Name and address for the record, please. Again, this is a scheduling motion, everybody.
Hi, Paul Zonfrillo, 7 Windward Circle in Narragansett. I want to thank the council. I would encourage you to schedule this and hear out the no more than 3. It's an important milestone.
Well, excuse me. And if you're going to speak, I need to swear you in. So if you don't
Oh,
mind,
sorry.
please raise your.
I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm raising my right hand as I say it.
Go ahead.
So as I was saying, I want to thank the council for scheduling this very important no more than 3 that will usher in a golden age for Narragansett as the population shifts away from a more communal population to a more work from home. And I applaud doing this. It's really going to revolutionize our town and really make things a whole lot better. So thank you for hearing it.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Again, I'm reminded it's a scheduling motion, Mr. Holland.
Yep, next person is Steve.
All right, name and address, and please spell your first and last name.
Stephen Ferrandi. First name Stephen, last name is Ferrandi, Ferrandi.
Stephen, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, council members. I'd like to reiterate also that that I appreciate the council furthering this. 5 council votes for the student ordinance. This will, as Phil said, change our Narragansett neighborhoods for the benefit, put some tranquility back into our neighborhoods that probably should have been there many years ago. So I appreciate you taking it up. And thank you, council members.
All right, I'm gonna add, thank you. Is there anyone else, Mr. Holland?
Nope, that's it.
All right, so all in favor, I'm gonna go down the list, starting with Mr. Lima. Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
and Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0, and that is 8 p.m. on August 17th. This returns us to our regular agenda.
Excuse me, Matt?
item- Yeah,
Excuse me, just for a second. If you could just refer to, through a series of continuations, the public hearing on the bulk zoning ordinance amendments had at one point been continued to tonight, but that's been taken off the agenda for continuation, possibly at some date to be determined. But it was the last continuation that was announced through the COVID-19 postponements.
okay, thank you. So if they come back, they're gonna have to come back as regular motions, essentially is what you're saying.
Yes.
Item number 8 is a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the voter initiative to amend chapter 42 of the Code of Ordinances, adding a new section entitled Acquisition and Renovation of New Library at the former Belmont IGA location to be placed on the ballot for the November 2020 general election. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Second,
Right, so that's Jesse Pugh makes the motion, seconded by Mr. Murray. Just before I get initial comments from the council, I'm based on our prior conversations, I will just read what will go on the ballot so everyone hears it. Whereas the Narragansett Town Council orders that the following questions shall be placed on the ballot at the general election to be held on November 3rd, 2020. Shall chapter 42 of the Code of Ordinances be amended to add a new section 42-2 entitled Acquisition and Renovation of New Library at the former Belmont IGA location to limit the use of up to $5,800,000 in bonds and or notes for the acquisition of the former Belmont supermarket ground floor, and 2, the administrative office space second floor at the Pier Marketplace, along with approximately 59 parking spaces, to renovate and equip that space as a library, and to apply for matching or grant funds from the state of Rhode Island for the acquisition and renovation of a new library. Just wanted to get that on the record so people at home could hear it. And if there's initial council comment, we'll start with Mr. Lima.
So in this one here, it talks about the second floor, and I believe Beer Liquors has a written sales agreement for their space and the second floor. So again, what happens with all of that? That just gets pushed to the side and Beer Liquors is out. Again, this is another initiative put in. This one was put in by Susan Bonanno. So again, suing the town for something that was purchased. They don't like the way the situation's worked out. And now, we want to hold things up and try to go a different avenue here. I don't agree with it. I think that, again, the people have spoke and hopefully they'll speak again. And I hope they vote this down. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
yeah, I'm good with this.
Mr. Pugh?
Yeah, I think this is a good initiative, in my opinion. I don't think it does anything to remove Pier Liquor from that building. It wouldn't, nothing in here that says they need to be removed from their space. And the thing about this initiative is we just had a conversation about how the original bond question did not specify the IGA building. And that's why 3 members of the council think that they don't need to move the library to the IGA building because it wasn't specified. So now we have a initiative that asks the voters specifically, where do you want to have the library? Do you want to use the bond for the IGA building? Put it back up to the voters, let them vote, and it's clear. So we don't have to have this argument for another 2 years. We can make it very specific, and the people can choose if they want to use the bond for the IGA building. We'll have a clear term next term. And it'll be decided by the people like a lot of people think it was last time, but now it's, you can't argue after the results of this one. Thank you.
Ms. Waller.
So again, in 2018, 3 people were voted in that opposed the development of the old IGA, or we should be calling it the Gilbane building. So I have to state that again. And we do have a current building. We toured it last week, and there is potential to be able to build out with the existing building. I think we need to take a look at that. I will be voting against this. I'll be voting for it tonight because we have to, but I'll be definitely campaigning against it.
Again, this, just for the record, 1,321 validated signatures signed for this language, which would limit the borrowing to the 5.8 million, up to 5.8 million. It would only be able to be used at the IGA site, IGA Belmont site, if this goes through. Right? If an alternative site presented itself that could be purchased, that if someone else wanted, you couldn't borrow to put a library there under this. Right, I'm going to ask if we have anyone from the public on this, from our moderator.
First is Stanley Wojciechowski.
All right, Stan, just name and address for the record, please. Go ahead.
Stanley Wojciechowski, Boston Lake Road. First, I'd like to say that it's more than 15,000 residents in Narragansett, and less than 6,000 voted for a library expansion of sorts. I keep on hearing those numbers. Less than a majority voted for this issue. But the more important thing is we have new data, new input that puts a stop to all activity concerning this library. The new data is the virus. I cannot see children being mixed with old people in any library setting. You understand how children get their body fluids and everything all over the books, tables, and everywhere. You cannot police the children adequately. They will continually have body fluids all over the place, which will be unable to clean up appropriately. So the children shall be banned from the library, from my perspective, okay? Now, they have libraries in their specific schools, and I say that's the alternative. Each child shall go to the school library with their parents if necessary. The school libraries will become the employment center for our children. All children will have specific areas in their schools that they can utilize. They don't need to go to a central library and be contaminated or contaminate old people, number one. So now we're talking a lot lower number of people going to the library. Therefore, we don't need a larger building at all. I can see Zoom has taken over a lot of the issues that need to happen. I can see that we'll only have old people go there, as I've seen out there, many old people out in the parking lot pushing for a library, and I understand that. But I've talked to my grandson, and he says he goes to the school library. He doesn't go to the town library. So based on this, we must consider, or reconsider the whole idea. The whole idea is old, it's obsolete, and it's been trumped by virus. And from what I hear, the virus could be more than a year, and it could be more. So we've got to stop the whole library activity until the virus is gone and reconsidered. Therefore, this should not be here at all. Please stop activity. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask our moderator if we have another speaker.
Next is Dr. Alba.
All right, name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I have my doctorate degree in curriculum and instruction, mathematics. I'm a certified administrator for the state of Rhode Island, and I hold a life certification in mathematics. Those are my areas of expertise. Stan's an engineer. I would be a fool to second guess his expertise. He's a brilliant man in engineering. We have the library board. The library board consists of educators and librarians who studied library science throughout the years. I would be a fool to second guess them. This location has been determined by the library board, the sages of library science and library expertise. In fact, our own town solicitor, Mark, mentioned previously, we do not even have, the town council does not even have the ability to go above and build an existing library board and an existing library without using the expertise of the library board. So everyone recognizes it. It's in our bylaws that the library board, they're entrusted. And yet we have people who try to second guess them, which makes me shaking my head in disbelief. We also have had many people testify, hours on end, children, elderly. We spent hours and hours and hours pleading. So to me, this is a very valid initiative. And let's hear the will of the people. Let's hear the will of Narragansett, because I myself am an educator who has had lots of schooling, could not go to my high school library, could not go to my middle school library. I had to go to the Warwick Public Library when I was growing up because they had so many vast resources. In regards to COVID-19, we'll be able to create the state-of-the-art library, which will be able to prevent and safeguard and watch over the children and the elderly. We'll be able to take preventative measures. All we have to do is look at the Providence Library, the state-of-the-art Providence Library, Tiverton Library, state-of-the-art. See what they all have to offer and see that we are in need of a new state-of-the-art library. Thank you very much.
And I'm going to ask our moderator if there's anyone else from the public that wishes to weigh in.
Next is Lori Kelly.
All right, name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Lori Kelly, 25 Wildfield Farm Road. So it seems like we're going to try to reinvent history now and say there were 3 people who were against the library when they were elected in 2018. And this is important because, as Ricky says, let's stick to the fact. Don't say 70% if it's 67.7. So Jill, on December 3rd, 2018, this was your quote, Jill Lawler. Well, we own the building. We don't need to talk about that anymore. We own it. I think it's in the best interest of the town for the library committee to fundraise and get this purchase going forward. And Ricky said, I can guarantee if we are going to move forward. I hope everyone will be able to move forward because once we get going, I'm going to be going. And even Matt Manick said, I don't think we want to send out the architect or consultant requests for proposal if we are not sure whether the library board of trustees will be funding it from their budget or us. So there were not 3 people who were against the library when they were elected in 2018. And by that token, you know why these initiatives were formed. So yes, this is very important. All the complaints over the last 2 years, now you have a chance to vote on these initiatives, and for once and for all, the people of Narragansett can say who they want on the council and what they want done with the library. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public?
Matt, can I just have one comment on in response to that?
Just one.
Just one. I just want to respond back that the date mentioned of my quote was December 3rd. Clearly that was after the election day. That's all.
Thank you. I'm as the moderator if we have another speaker from the public.
Next is Paul Zonfrillo.
All right, Mr. Zonfrillo, name and address for the record.
Paul Zonfrillo, 7 Windward Circle. Unfortunately, this has to go on the ballot. It's definitely, if you read it, it talks about that the whole space has got to be used for the new library. And so, you know, that also means the Pier Liquors is going to have to move. And then if you combine it with the other one that we can't sell any real property without a referendum, it's a double whammy there too. And, you know, I'm glad it's going to be on there. And I hope it gets voted down. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to get final comments from the council members. Start with Mr. Lima.
Yeah, so there's no question that all all 5 council members want to see something done with a library in this town. I've never heard anybody say they don't. And for me, I've said it from day one. I want the best library that this town can afford. And this project is definitely not affordable to the taxpayers of this town. Once you do this for 20 years, put on the handcuffs. Road bonds, I don't know. You might not get many roads done. Anything else that goes on, you might see it cut. And the most important place that I don't want to see cuts, because we're not moving forward without knowing what's going to happen with what's going on right now, is I hope that we don't start cutting our education because we just don't have the money, and we'll have to raise taxes to a point that people in this town just won't be able to afford. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a long dog fight. Back on the ballot, up and down vote. Certainly, everybody knows the history or has their own history. It's, I'll tell you, my mom used to say, I'm tired as a dish rag. So that's what I feel. I am so tired of this issue. Let's get it on the ballot. Let's get it squared away. And I think because of COVID-19, one can make the case that we need a bigger, cleaner, modern library to offset the effects of the COVID-19. So I'm supporting this one. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
So just to kind of get back to the wording in this initiative. So what it does say is that it would be, the bond would be used for the former Belmont supermarket and the second floor. So it does not include the liquor store, which is not the supermarket. Supermarket and a liquor store are 2 separate things. It's right there in the wording. As for, you know, the fact that we have a representative democracy, as Councilor Lawler said, we do. She's correct. However, there are elements of our democracy that are direct, and that's what the initiative is for. So these initiatives give the people that chance to have a direct democracy. So they could vote on specific issues and get the outcome that they're looking for based on those votes. So we do have a hybrid, actually, and that's what the initiative is for. So I say let the people speak, let them vote, and whatever the outcome is what we'll move forward with. Thanks.
Ms. Lawler.
I have nothing further, Matt. I'm not going to be campaigning for this at all. I'm sorry, against this.
I just need to clear up one of the latest mischaracterizations that gets made by applicants for the library. I clearly in August of 2018, in writing one of the candidate questionnaires, I said I wanted to repeal the deal to purchase this property that the 2016-18 council had voted on, which I had voted against, and made my reasons clear on that. So that was part of my campaign. I said it at the debate. Again, it's back in writing. You can go back and look at the questionnaire. So again, but the mischaracterizations, I think it's one of the things that's really disheartened people in town with the current leadership of the Board of Trustees is these half-truths. And I have a stack of them here. And one day I'd be glad to go through them with somebody who would want to listen. But anyway, that's for another day. Those are final thoughts from the council. So all in favor, I'm going to start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, voting aye, but campaigning deadly against this. I definitely don't want the taxpayers' taxes going through the roof.
Mr. Murray.
Total cost over 20 years is 8 cents per thousand, $400,000 house.
I don't think so.
Yes, it is. $32.
All right, on our votes, guys, we're going to have to start to call the vote aye or nay when I go through the vote, just for the record for Terry. We have final thoughts and then just aye or nay. Okay, so Patrick, are you aye or nay on this?
$32 a year for 20 years for a full.
Patrick, are you aye or nay? Okay.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr.
Definitely.
Pugh.
Patrick, what are those numbers? I'm just
Mr.
kidding.
Fields.
Goodbye.
Mature,
8
that's the
cents.
maturity we've experienced in the last.
Yes, I know, man.
Miss
We're
Lawler.
children. That's
Miss
why we need a
Lawler.
big children's library.
Miss Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye. Regrettably.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 9 is a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the voter initiative to adopt a resolution that the ownership of certain property not be transferred in any way unless approved by the initiative process or for the relocation of the Maury Union Library to that site to be placed on the ballot for the November 2020 general election. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Jesse makes the motion, Patrick seconds it. Just for the record, I'm going to read the language, whereas this is going to be a language that will be on the ballot. Whereas the Narragansett Town Council orders that the following question shall be placed on the ballot at the general election to be held on November 3rd, 2020. Here's the actual language. Shall a resolution be adopted that the real property located at the former Belmont IGA building in 59 parking spaces, the library unit, and the building currently occupied by Peer Liquors and 9 parking spaces, the liquor store unit, and the strip of parking spaces abutting the town's public safety building and running to Caswell Street, parcel C, plus the additional real property described in the purchase and sales agreement executed by the town on March 12, 2018, shall not be offered for sale, sold, leased, or its ownership transferred in any way unless either approved by the initiative process or for the relocation of the Maury Union Library to this site. And just for the record, 995 individual validated signatures were attached to that language. So I'm just have initial comments from the council, and then we'll go to the public, starting with Mr. Lima.
I think I've laid out what I feel about putting a building, putting a library in that Gilbane building. It's, again, it's not affordable. The numbers that people have thrown out there, not even close. If you read the advertisement, it'll tell you almost 500,000, 400 and some odd thousand just for the bond to pay it back in the first few years. That's not even the budget put on top of that, which again, they put the right people in, you'll have a big library budget. And if it's 841 with $500,000, that's 1.3 million, not counting any additional costs. And the taxpayers should remember, whatever the library board funds, raises for funds, which we'd have no idea, they have that hidden away, after the taxpayers paid Dan Barry $93,000, which if we paid him $93,000, then the taxpayers should know how much he fundraised. It's their money, why not? So all of this is up in the air on what this is going to cost. And like I said before, this will definitely handcuff the town for 20 years. Good luck road bonding. Good luck doing any improvements, capital, which we just cut 2.2 million out of the budget, not counting the library side. That should be first. That should come first before we buy or purchase or do anything new. That money should be put back in. That's the money that's needed to make the improvements to this town because the can's been kicked down the road for so many years. So think about it. Put the 2.2 in. Then if you want to add on the additional of what you want to do with this library, there it is. And taxpayers, get ready. 4% or more for the next 20 years. So people that are up to their eye levels with payments and maybe not employed, I feel for you. I really feel for you. Narragansett's a great town. We can build a library somewhere else much cheaper, half the money, third of the money. We can renovate the existing building. Don't anybody kid you that we can't. No, it can be done. They don't want it done. They don't want to save you money. They don't want to do what's the best for this town. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
Oh boy. Yeah, let's move forward. I'm all through discussing this issue. I mean, it's the same old record, and it's a scratchy old record, and I'm gonna toss that out. Let's just get to the November. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh,
No comments.
Ms. Lawler,
So this is the initiative written by Susan Cicely Bonanno, where it actually does spell out the liquor store unit. So for anyone who before was saying that they have no intention of putting a small business out of business, there it is in black and white. So I also want to remind that this building itself, it was purchased by a lame duck council. The very last meeting it went through, and that was led by Susan. So here we are. And now a candidate again for re-election, and she's trying to still have the town build that library in a building that we just can't afford. With CAM fees, I'm sorry, but Mr. Murray, that you negotiated $40,000 a year that can go up 5% every year. It was a really bad deal. It was a really bad deal for the town. That's all I have to say.
all right, thank you. Do we have anyone from the public? I'm gonna ask Mr. Howard.
Yeah, Matt, I want to say something since my name was mentioned. The camp fee-
Yeah, you can, we're gonna do a final round, so we're gonna go.
Well,
through
you just said you wanted just a vote. You didn't
No, I
want.
just said I'm going to the public. No, final thoughts. I'm gonna do final thoughts. And then-
All right.
Is there anyone, Mr. Holland?
I have Dr. Alba.
All right, and then we'll go back, final thoughts from the council after that. Name and address for the record.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I took a tour of the Tiverton Library, and I've read articles about the Providence Library, and it's amazing the philanthropy that's out there, the people that love to support programs that are going to better a community. So no one, Mr. Lima, I respect you being frugal, I'm frugal, but on the other hand, I recognize that ignorance is very costly as an educator. Okay, I work in corrections. One of the things I find is the more educated people are in society, the less chance they go on the dole, they go on social welfare programs. So anytime it comes to funding education or programming, I'm supportive. URI, the Bay Campus, I support it unequivocally. We also have philanthropists. We have millionaires, billionaires throughout our state, throughout the United States. Many of them will give willingly to support our library. So we have to consider that those monies will help offset the total cost. So Mr. Murray eloquently stated before that the cost for a $400,000, $500,000 house, it's a nominal increase. If you have a $5 million house, well, you know what? Their tax is going to go up, but they can well afford it. If you have a much lower price house, then it's a progressive tax. Well, actually, it's not even, it's a proportional tax. It's a proportional tax because it's based on proportion. But if you have a multi-million-dollar house, you're not going to quiver. You're not going to shake. You'll be able to afford it. Believe me. And ironically, it's not ironic, but actually it's a blessing. It's a blessing that the people who have the least amount of money are going to benefit the most. They're going to benefit the most because they can't afford the computers. They cannot afford the latest encyclopedias or later databases. They need these resources. The widow, the elderly who want a place to go in a safe haven, that this is their resource. So the most needy are going to benefit the most, and their taxes are going to go up the least. So I'm totally supportive of it, and I hope people will do the right thing and vote for this initiative. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else? I'm going to ask our moderator.
Nope, that's it.
All right, so final thoughts from the council. We'll start with Mr. Lima.
So, Mr. Albert, I will agree with you about libraries and education. You're right. But when you can build a library in this town for much less money and be state-of-the-art, brand new, or renovate for much less money, wouldn't you want to run that option? Or at least run the figures by the voters of the town? Show them exactly what those numbers are? Not just throw something out there that says it's 8 cents per thousand. 8 cents per thousand. We haven't even built it. And nobody's put a number together. Nobody did an RFP before they bought it. which I don't know anybody that buys something without knowing how much it's gonna cost them to renovate it before they buy it. So again, we can do something for this town that's unbelievable, a lot less money. The voters would be so happy. People would love it. So that's just what I'm stating. We got to tighten up the belt. We've got a long road ahead of us and we don't know which direction we're going in, you know? For some of us, yeah, bills are tough. We pay all our bills. I pay the taxes of the town. You know, they keep going up. Other people pay their taxes. You know what? Some people are borderline being able to pay their taxes and be able to afford to be here. And I don't want to push those people out, whether they're elderly, young couple, families, whatever. So every penny is important to them. It's important to me to make sure these people stay. And that's what I'm looking after, their pennies. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
Okay, again, this has all been vetted. We did look at other locations. Matt, you even voted to support it, placing it in the pier. But only then till later to vote against putting it in the Belmont. So the numbers were vetted, up to 50% from the state.
42.
All this has been vetted. And so the numbers just aren't thrown out there, Rick. I mean, we actually, you know, did vet these numbers
Yeah.
with Jeff Cesarine. And it is an extensive research. Also, the RFP, you were all ready to vote on our RFP before you voted just before you voted to sell the building. You were all on board with an RFP. And then 2 weeks later, you voted to sell the building. So I don't know which one it is. I don't know what happened on the way to the chamber, but let's move forward, get this thing squared away. And the good news is bond interest rates are down. So that's the good news. So we might even get a little cheaper on the rate there. Oh yeah, one other thing. Yeah, the cam charges were about 38,000. We were getting, I forget what it was. It was like 55,000, 60,000 from the liquor store. And the liquor store lease paid for the cam charges and then some. So again, misdirection, misinformation. It's been out there, and let's get this done. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
It is kind of amazing to hear this conversation at this point. It's like a year and a half, almost 2 years in, on this debate about the library. First thing, like Patrick said, there's been multiple estimates done on what the cost would be to build this library in IGA. So that happened. That already happened. It happened before Rick was on the council, before I was on the council. You know, for Councilor Lima to say that we have no idea what the cost is going to be. We spent 6 months trying to get it approved, and you wouldn't vote for it. So we don't know the exact cost because you wouldn't vote to approve an RFP. So you're making an argument that you caused the situation. You caused it. So if you want to not knowing the cost, blame yourself.
I didn't do it.
Isolating us, or you forgot that happened, but people watched it happen. We spent 6 months proposing an RFP. You wouldn't approve it, and now you're
twisted around.
Nobody knows the cost. So outside of that, again, we have to approve this. There's really no choice. In fact, it's an initiative. We can debate the library forever, but I'll be voting yes on the initiative.
Ms. Lawler.
So it was the council before us that caused this problem. I have nothing further to say.
One thing some people mentioned, what happened in between certain meetings where they were going to have the RFP and then the RFP did not go through. I know that several council members in that interim period met with bond counsel And that was in late 2018, early 2009. So I think that was something that was informative for people. And that's part of the job. That's part of the job as a town councilman or town councilwoman is you kind of look at the facts as they come to you and you meet with people who are going to tell you about what the situation is with the bond. And, you know, that's part of what the whole job is. And I think that and many people had different reactions to that. And that's how it should work. And I think in the end with these library things, the debate about this is gotten so ugly and unnecessarily ugly about three things. Do we want the library at one end of the pier or the other, where you can literally see it from one place to the other, how big it's going to be, and what programs are going to be there? And I don't think that has warranted what the last 2 years have brought forward, and it's been very sad to watch. All right, all in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Our next item is item 10, a motion to approve a contract with Weston and Simpson Engineers Incorporated for consulting services to revise the town's emergency operations plan in the amount of $22,990. Their motion.
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Richard Lima, second.
All right, discussion. This comes from the fire chief regarding the fixing of our operations plan. Is there initial commentary from the council, Mr. Lima?
No, I think that people should understand that before some of the operations in this town can be done, you do have to go through these contracts with this particular company is a very good company. They do a lot of services all over the state and country, I believe. So a lot of this is you have to go through with it. If you're really going to look at different plans and look at different things and what the costs and the operations are for amount of money, they put it all together, review it, and send it back to you and get you going on the right direction. So just want to let the people of the town know that.
Thank you. Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Mr. Pugh.
All set.
And Ms. Lawler.
Nothing further.
All right. Is there anyone from the public?
Nobody from the public.
All right. Since then what I'll do is I will call the vote on that, starting with Mr.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Next items come from the IT department. Number 11 is a motion to approve the renewal of the Munis application services with Tyler Technologies Incorporated in the amount of $60,000 for $60,419 for fiscal year 2021. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Any initial comments from the council? Mr. Lima.
I have none.
Mr. Murray.
All set.
Mr. Pugh.
No comments.
Ms. Lawler.
No comment.
All right. Anyone from the public? Mr. Oscar Moderator.
Nobody from the public.
All right. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 12 is a motion to approve the renewal of the Viewpoint Open Gov application services with Viewpoint Government Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $13,440 and the cost of $1,840 per block of 500 records for anything over the purchase block of 3,000 licenses. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right. Any initial comments from the council, starting with Mr. Lima?
I have none.
Mr. Murray.
All set.
Mr. Pugh.
No comments.
Ms. Lawler.
I'm good on this.
All right. Is it Ms. I'm as the moderator if there's anyone from the public?
Nobody from the public.
All right. This is for our licensing and building permit software. So I'm going to call the vote on this. Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. The next two items come from community development and relate to the harbor management plan that we just had the hearing on. Item 13 is a motion to amend the Narragansett Harbor Management Plan addressing changes to the timeframe for mooring field operations in the South Ferry, Anawan, and Harbor of Refuge fields, contingent upon amendment to Chapter 82, Section 82-203, mooring season of the Narragansett Code of Ordinances. Is there a motion?
So moved, Jill Lawler.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Okay, so discussion. So we had our presentation from Mr. Connors on this, the harbor master. I'm going to ask if there's any comments, initial commentary from the council, starting with Mr. Lima.
None.
Mr. Murray.
I'm all set.
Mr. Pugh.
I'm good.
Ms. Lawler.
No comments.
Okay, so this is an amendment of the plan itself. So I'm going to call a vote on that. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 14 is a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 82 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Waterways, specifically text revisions at Section 82-203 mooring season, amending Narragansett Code of Ordinances to address changes requested by the Harbor Management Commission, changing the timeframe for mooring field operations in the South Ferry, Anawan, and Harbor of Refuge fields. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, discussion, starting, then the initial commentary, starting with Mr. Lima.
Have none.
We go to Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
No comments.
Ms. Lawler.
I'm good with this.
And this is, just want to thank the Harbor Management and the Planning Department, Harbor Management Commission and the Planning Department for digging into this. This is the type of work that we do appreciate from our volunteers on boards and commissions, where you have specific issues when you have an issue like the moorings across the town. And I know these are rockier areas as we were told from, we know from living in the town. So just wanted to thank them for their efforts on this and their patience as well, because this has been postponed a few times. Is there anyone from the public?
Nobody from the public.
Okay, all in favor? We'll start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 15 is a motion to reconsider the July 6, 2020 vote to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading a resolution amending the official list of parking restrictions and regulations in the town of Narragansett in accordance with the Narragansett Code of Ordinances to restrict parking on Hazard Avenue. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second from Patrick Murray. Discussion. Item 15 comes from Mr. Pugh. I'm going to send it over to him, and then we'll go through the council's initial comment.
Thank you. Yep, so this is a reconsideration of the vote we took at our last meeting to amend the parking ordinance Hazard Ave. The reason I put it back up as a reconsideration, even though we will be doing the vote on the second reading, is because I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to discuss it, and also that the public had a chance to weigh in again. Because I know sometimes with second readings, we go right to the vote without comment. So I just wanted to be totally sure that we were able to discuss this one. So we voted a couple weeks ago on it. And what it really did was tighten up that parking on Hazard Ave to remove space that 3 cars can fit into. I have a lot of respect for the police chief's opinion on these matters. So at the time I did vote to approve that. And I think that was a mistake by me. So at least in my opinion, I think that was a mistake. I gave it more thought since then. And what I don't like to see in these places where we have public access to the water is I don't like seeing parking removed, because when that happens, we get to a point where that parking just doesn't come back. So the position I'm in now is that I would like to see that parking stay while we work on a plan to make it safer down the road, or to add some parking in there in a better way. Rereading the motion, the original motion, I could see that it was basically stemmed from a complaint by one resident. And the idea of one resident affecting parking that's going to be taken away from so many people that use that road is not something that I support. So I've changed my position. I'm going to be voting no if we get to the point where we could, take that vote. And I'd like to see the ordinance stay as is, as opposed to amended. Thanks.
Are there any initial comments from the council, starting with Mr. Lima?
So initially, is the chief still on a Zoom meeting?
Yes, I'm here.
Chief. So initially, Chief, you went down there, you took a look at this, you, again, I know that you kind of look at different places, especially one like this, Hazard Avenue. There's a lot of incidences that have gone on there in the past history. And you look at this from a safety, I'm sure the safety of not only the people that park there, but the safety of the people that use it. And then being able to get safety equipment, safety vehicles down there in case there is something that happens. I know that not every year, but it's just about every 2 years, we do have a tragic accident on those rocks, whether it's Hazard or Newton Avenue. So again, could you just give us just a little brief again on why you recommended to go with this? Again, I supported the last one, and I support with what our public safety wants to implement, because it's very important.
Certainly, just to go over the fact pattern again, we did have that complaint down there, and the complaint was given to the work safety work group that I have for the traffic safety. So I like to get the opinion of a lot of different people looking at it from a different perspective on what the conditions are. So judging the road by the existing conditions, not any widening or any other changes like that, our group came back and said that what the person was saying was true, that those 9 designated parking spaces down there, that it does become very congested and it becomes unsafe. So we thought that it was best to change the ordinance so that basically to reflect what was, I believe, was the intent of the ordinance in the first place, was to have the 9 designated parking spaces so that the parking down there would be safer for the public to access.
Thanks, Chief. So again, as the chief mentioned, this is, again, I know people don't like hearing it because it does put a damper on a lot of things, but public safety is very important, very important. And for the people that don't know it, I was in public safety for over 20 some years. Saw a lot of tragic deaths because of incidences that people didn't listen to what the ordinances were. It's a shame that things like this have happened. And I'm not going to say it's going to happen here, but when safety comes into an issue, you better look at safety. You better look at the safety of not only those that are using it, but again, even the safety of those people that tend to walk along those rocks. I know as kids, we would bike down to Monahan's Dock and we would walk all the way up the rocks. We'd walk all the way down to what they call Stinky Beach, Scarborough. And again, any of the areas that, have public right-of-ways or ways or means of people getting to the water, yeah, they're there, but they all don't come with parking. And we already went through this in another neighborhood in our town. And I definitely don't want to see where we're going to start widening roads and doing all kinds of crazy things to put even more people either in danger or in an area that could be overrun by people. And then, what happens after that? So I agree with the chief on this one. They made a decision. That's their job. That's their profession. And I believe we should go with the professional opinion here. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
Yes, my no vote in the July 6th meeting was a protest vote of the encroachment of riparian rights that seems to be happening on a steady basis. The erosion of access to our oceans and rivers is, it's something that, we need to provide access, not shut down access. We need to provide parking, not shut down parking. So it's nothing to do with the chief. I knew this was gonna pass. I'm hoping in the new election cycle, if I get support and get reelected, it is my intention to look at these areas and for reconfiguration, to refit them so we can have safe parking with access. So that's my intention in the future. And we need to take a look at this. I mean, these neighborhoods, these roads aren't private. These are public roads. And to provide parking, to have access to the ocean for surfing, fishing, or whatever, just walking along the shore, should be something we should be looking at very strongly. And then 2020-22 cycle, I'll be looking at that, coming up with some different plans. Thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
Do you want to, I just have a quick question for Jesse. You mentioned here that you that discussion could be valuable and there may be options. Are you planning on presenting some options tonight? Because there were no attachments on the agenda. So do you have an alternative to present to us tonight?
No, nothing tonight. What we need to do is look at this area comprehensively, as well as a bunch of other areas, all the public access points, and come up with a plan to take back some of this road, because one of the issues here is that the reason why this may be considered unsafe is because these yards have encroached the public road. So the reason these roads are so narrow is because we have a few very, very large houses on that road that have moved and made that road more narrow. There's hedges that go right up to the edge now. So what has caused the safety issue? Is it the parking or is it the road getting narrow? So that we'll look into is widening that road, because it is owned by the town.
I have nothing further, Matt.
All right, thank you. We've got just one procedural note on this. So if the council votes to reconsider, we go to item number 16 as a first reading. If the council were to not reconsider, then we would go to the second reading of item number 17. That being said, we're going to go to the public. I'm going to ask our moderator if we have members of the public who would wish to weigh in.
Yes, we do. First one is Dave Avedizian.
All right, please say your name and address for the record, please.
Dave Avedizian, 18 Brown Street, Narragansett. I just have a couple of comments and just kind of support what Patrick was saying. Over the past few years, I've watched how we've limited residents' ability to park anywhere in town. Unless you have the ability to walk to that particular area and you're a resident in this town, you can't park there. There was a comprehensive parking study that was done about 3 years ago. And we were going to shift to a policy that was very similar to Newport's, where if you have a car that's registered in the town of Narragansett and you are a resident, you can park on any street in the town of Narragansett. Instead, what we've done lately is if you like to paddle board in Narrow River and you want to park your car over on Castle Road or Star Drive because the parking lot is tight now because of the big boulders the town has put there, you can't park there even though you're a resident and you pay property tax on your car that goes to pay for the roads in your town. If I'm a resident and I want to go to one of the local restaurants or stores in the Pier Village, which we keep saying we like to revitalize, unless I live in the pier, I can't park on any of those pier streets. Actually, if I live in the pier, I'm only really supposed to park on the street in which I live. So if I lived on Brown Street, I can park on Brown Street, but I can't park on Boone Street. And if the beach parking lot was full, I can't park on any of those side streets, even though my vehicle is registered in the town of Narragansett and I can't walk there. Same thing goes with Point Judith. We've limited access there, and now we're going to limit access on Hazard Ave. I would like to see the town go back and look at the comprehensive study that was done a few years ago when it comes to these next few motions, 15, 16, 17, 18, and look at what that study said and reconsider allowing any resident the ability to park on any town street if their car is registered in the town of Narragansett. It's the only fair way to go. It's what Newport does. It's what Westerly does down near the water. It's what the town of Narragansett should do. Otherwise, why am I paying property tax on my vehicle if I can't use the roads equally like everyone else? Instead, we've created basically a gated community. Everyone complains about parking on their street. So basically a gate goes up on their street, a virtual gate, and no one else can use it. And that's not what the town of Narragansett is about, but somehow it's quickly become that. And I'd like to see that. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask the moderator if there's anyone else from the public.
Next is Dr. Alba.
Name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Yeah, I think the golden rule should not be those who own the gold rules, but do unto others as you want them to do unto you. I do respect the chief greatly. He's an outstanding chief. He's doing a wonderful job. I appreciate all the police. He has an outstanding staff. I do feel we should revisit this. We should maybe have some civil engineers or see if we can widen that area. Social distancing, I think that's a beautiful place where people get plenty of social distancing. So we don't have to worry about COVID-19 situation. But it's fresh air, it's clean fun, it's a family-oriented activity. I think we have to be able to make way for families in Narragansett who might not have the monies to take a vacation in different states or even different towns or even out of the country or whatever it might be, but they want to enjoy all the beauties of Narragansett. So we have to look after those families that want to have fun times with their family members, and they're not going to be going down to a beautiful place like Hazard Avenue and then have to turn around over and over and over again because they cannot find a place to park. I just think that's a shame. So if we can possibly reconsider expanding that street, making it more accessible, maybe getting the fire department, the rescue, get them involved, seeing that with how somewhere we can adopt that street so that where there no safety issues will occur, and yet we will also make it available for a higher percentage of our residents. I think that'll be a beautiful thing. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to ask our moderator if we have another public speaker.
Next is somebody with a Samsung Galaxy S7.
All right, we don't have your name, so please state your name and address for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that's me. Casey Montanari, 21 Checkerberry Trail, Narragansett.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, it's hard to hear you guys too. I wasn't planning on speaking out about this, but I'd like to bring a couple of points that I think are important. I agree with what Dave and Al just said. I also understand fully the chief's concerns about safety. That's why I have been very vocal about my concerns with shutting down Boone Street to allow dining. I think safety is a really important concern, but I'm also a resident in Metatux, and we have a corner lot. And last year we lost, I don't know, 1.5 feet to 3 feet on both sides of our property to make the roads wider just to address these same safety concerns. So if we can do that to the working class and the blue collar workers, white collar workers, whatever you want to call them, if we can do that to us and in these neighborhoods, why can't we do it to the rich people on Ocean Road? And that's something that I really have trouble wrapping my head around. The people should have access to these beaches. We do have a huge parking problem, and we all need to really work together to find the solutions, to find a compromise between everybody's concerns and the public's right to access.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
There is. Next is Melissa.
All right, name and address, please, for the record.
Melissa Holcomb, 15 Judith Avenue. And I just wanted to say, I don't understand this whole idea of it's a safety issue. You can have one car parked there and someone can still drown. It's a matter of education in safety with water play and fishing and all of that. So this whole idea of it's for our safety, I just not buying it enough. I don't know. And no disrespect to you, Chief. I know you're doing your job, and I know you're probably getting like so many complaints about it from people, and it, you know, you're trying to make everybody happy, and I get that. But again, like, we cannot keep losing access to our waterways because people don't like having people there. You bought a house next to a right of way. You have to deal
Right.
with it.
That's right.
I live near Scarborough Beach. People park on my street to go to Scarborough Beach. It's not a big deal. I don't own this street. That's what we have to start understanding. We are not a condo association. We're not a gated community. We are a beautiful community on the water. Enough is enough. Access to water for everyone. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else from the public?
That's it.
All right, I'm going to get final comments from the council members. Mr. Lima, before the vote on the motion to reconsider. So Mr. Lima.
Yeah, so being able to park in town and being able to park on Hazard Avenue, I mean, I understand Mr. Avadesian's point, and I've chatted with him about it. And I agree that if you, wherever you live in town, if there's a parking spot and you want to park your car there, but you're from north end, south end, or whatever, you should be able to park. And I believe that at some point, we have looked into that. Maybe have to look into it a little bit more deeper with, you know, you're a town resident, you get a sticker, you can park there. I get that side of it. But on Hazard Avenue and other places like that, where you do have to get a public safety vehicle in, and whether people have seen it or not, I have. And the police department's pretty good about it. You know, in the off seasons when the gentlemen go fishing, I mean, they tend to park up and down the streets. They're pretty good about it. You know, they try to park so that, you know, vehicles can get by. They don't try to block areas. And again, nobody wants to limit people from being able to go to the ocean or go to the water or any of that. But if the area is allocated for 9 parking spots, and that seems to be the best you can get out of it because of a safety issue, then that's what it is. You know, the beach has so many parking spots. We wish it had another 1,000, but it doesn't. So that's what it is. And, you know, as far as neighborhoods go, whether it's Metatuxet, Petaquamsket, all that, there's only so many places you're going to be able to park. And if you want to start opening up the avenue of allowing everybody to park up and down the streets in those neighborhoods, then, you know, more power to you. I don't think those neighborhoods are going to be that happy with having, you know, a ton of people from whether they're out of town or where they're from. In-town people, I can tell you this. If you go to some of those people and explain to them that you're from in town, I know myself, growing up, we were able to park in certain neighborhoods, Anawan Cliffs and other areas. We just went to some of the homeowners, explained who we are, why we were looking for a parking spot. And within more reason, believe it or not, people were more than willing to allow us to park in their driveways, parts of their lawn or whatever. You just had to, you know, be within reason and let them know, you know, why you wanted to park there. So again, I definitely know Hazard Avenue well, and it's been a problem with Newton Avenue as well for a long period of time.
All right, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I understand, you know, we don't want to have a safety issue. I get that. But it seems like a lot of these right-of-ways that the town owns are being encroached on and being, you know, shrunken to where it becomes an issue. So it's just taking a look at it and see if you can, you know, tweak those right-of-ways and reconfigure them. I don't like the way the parking is down at Hazard Avenue, where it's an angle parking, you gotta turn around. I mean, it's a tight turnaround. So certainly, it's not an ideal situation now. But if we can come up with a different plan, that'd be fine. I'm good.
All right, Mr. Pugh.
Chief, if you're still on, I do have a question for you. You still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, thanks. So, you know, safety issue could be kind of mean a lot of different things. Can you explain, because, you know, I know that road and I know how the parking is configured. So these 3 additional cars that fit in there, they're not sticking out into the road any further than the perpendicular parking. So can you explain just to us a little bit about what that safety issue entails or what it is?
I think a big part of the reason why you're seeing these issues being more prevalent this year than they have in the past is because of the COVID-19 restrictions that have been placed. In fact, when we got this complaint was right around the time that we had shut the parking down along the seawall. And look at it like this weekend when Scarborough was restricted to 25% capacity, and that just pushes all the people who want to be along the shore to different areas. Go down there and they start creating parking spots like where you've seen. You pull a car down to the water, so you're going down there looking to get one of those 9 parking spaces, and you drive down and they're full. Or if you do get one of those parking spaces, then when you go to leave, what people do is they back straight out from there. But now instead of they'll come back to where the 9 spots end and then hook your left and head out, they're going to have go forward like another 100 feet. And what a lot of people will do will try to back into that private drive right there. So they're hitting their the landscaping or the stone wall there, or they're hitting their mailbox. And it's also just a concern with the amount of people you got walking through the area to have these cars backing up such a long distance in order to turn their vehicles around.
Okay, so it's about that backing up to get out of there more so than this blocking a fire truck any more than it would be blocked with the designated parking.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So if that road was wider, then when people drive to the end there, they'd be able to do like a 3-point turn and get out of there possibly.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about when we do an examination for a parking complaint or because we have an accident or anything, we always look at the existing conditions. So if you start changing the variables, a wider road or any other kind of conditions, then it would have to be re-examined.
Okay. All right, great. No, thanks for giving the details on that.
Yeah.
So, you know, the first step in the plan would be to stop the ordinance amendment of taking away 3 spots. So that's the first thing. You stop that from happening. The second step is look at a plan to widen the road. So that could be the plan. If you could take 3 feet off of someone's 1/4 acre lot in Metuxet, then there shouldn't be that big of an issue taking 3 feet away from these lots that are multiple acres on Hazard Ave. I don't really see where the big conflict is, or why this is such a hard decision compared to doing it in Metuxet or any of those other, you know, big neighborhoods in the North End. So again, I'm for stopping this, you know, removal of spaces while we look for a solution to keep it, to save it. Thanks.
Ms. Lawler.
I actually have a question for Jim. Jim, the roads in Metuxet that had land taken away from them, the houses, can you talk a little bit about that company and what has happened with that company since they widened the roads there? Are they working for the town any further?
I'm not familiar with the individual residents that had some of their land taken away from them. We did have the new pavement where there was some expansion on it, but that's going well. Mike, everything that was done before with the other paving company, they've corrected all the deficiencies that they had down there.
Yep, and that widening of those neighborhoods are standards that we're doing townwide with the bond project, where roads within neighborhoods that were 17 to 18 feet wide are now being widened to industry standard of 22 feet. Those right-of-ways in those areas are 40 foot. So there's still plenty of town right-of-way on either side of the roadway. Yes, it looks like residents lost frontage, but it's still all town right away, and there's still more town of right away on those frontages also. You know, most of the roads, when these plats were developed in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, low volume when we only had 4,000 or 5,000 residents in the town. Now we have 15 to 17, 30 in the summer, and a lot more high volume on our roads now, even in the smaller plats or even in the developed plats. So as a standard with the industry, that's what we're widening our roads to 22 feet. We have bigger trucks now, bigger ladder trucks, bigger fire trucks than before, and we need the room for, you know, if you have vehicles parked on one side of a neighborhood that doesn't have parking restrictions, we need to be able to get through those roads still.
I have no further questions, Matt.
All right, thank you. I think I would just want us to be very cautious about starting to digging into people's yards and their frontage, unless absolutely necessary. That's something, some of this conversation is maybe a little fearful that we're forgetting private property rights and protecting those private property rights. So I find some aspects of this conversation something that a little scary on the private property front. All in favor, we're going to start with Mr. Lima.
You have a hand up, Matt.
We already went through the public though. Yeah. Mr. Lima.
I vote no.
Mr. Murray.
I vote aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Trustee Pugh, yes.
Ms. Lawler.
No.
Matt Mannix, no. Motion fails 2-3, which brings us to item number 17. A motion to read, pass, and adopt as a second reading a resolution amending the official list of parking restrictions and regulations of the town of Narragansett in accordance with the Narragansett Code of Ordinances to restrict parking on Hansard Avenue. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Terry, this is a second reading. I want to make sure that I followed the right path after the vote procedurally.
You did.
Okay, great. If there's no further discussion on this, I'm going to take the call on the vote. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Yes, Patrick Murray. Chief, this is no reflection on you. Thank you for your service. Patrick Murray, no.
Mr. Pugh.
Is there a reason why we're not going to the public for comment?
With the second reading, we just went through the whole thing.
Well, there was some.
Your vote.
This would be a good
There's
chance.
nobody up right now. What's your vote?
Nobody up? Okay. I'm going to vote no.
All right, Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 3-2. Item 18 is a motion to read, pass, and adopt as a second reading a resolution amending the official list of parking restrictions and regulations of the town of Narragansett in accordance with the Narragansett Code of Ordinances to restrict parking on Foster Road. Is there a motion?
So moved, Jill Lawler.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right,
May I interject a clarification on this one?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the interruption. There was some confusion expressed by some residents with some of the text in this, in as much as it made reference to Arbeth Road. And the correct name for that road, you know, maybe kind of interchangeable colloquially, but it is Arbeth Avenue. That is official. So there's reference to that with regard to this particular resolution. It's Arbeth Avenue.
So then we're going to have to amend this and have a second reading on it in 2 weeks. If that would probably be the best way to do that. Terry, it's 100% that it's Arbeth Avenue, not Arbeth Road.
Referring to the recorded plat for that area from 1953, it's Arbeth Avenue. And I also checked the town council records to see if there was ever any official name change for that road, and I did not find one.
So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to seek, we have a motion on the table with a second. I'm going to seek an amendment.
I move to change Arbeth Road to Arbeth Avenue.
All right, Patrick Murray makes the motion for the amendment. Is there a second for that amendment?
Jill Lawler, second.
Okay, so we're gonna have discussion on that. I think Terry has clarified that for us, but does any council member, not gonna go down the list, any council member want to say anything just about Arbeth Road versus Avenue? Okay, I do want to ask if there's anyone from the public on this because of this new information. Is there anyone from the public, Mr. Holland?
There's one, Kimberly.
Right, Kimberly, could you state your name and address for the record?
Sure. This is Kimberly Buthiat at 17 Champlin. And I just want to go on the record stating that the actual road that the chief came down and looked at and worked with South Kingston Police has a sign on it called Foster Road. So if there is a misconstruction in the mapping or something, I just want to make sure that we're all clear that it is marked Foster Road. I live right across the street from it, can see the sign now. So, and I still support that we, for safety reasons, that I think the South Kingston Police went through with the chief the last time, that we close it down.
So just to clarify that for you, so yes, it's a Foster Road restriction, but there's reference to other roads in the ordinance. And that's why we're changing this Arbeth Road to Avenue, which I wasn't aware of. So
okay.
No parking on the south side entire length. This is, so it says Foster Road and then no parking on the south side entire length, no parking north side from Arbeth. Now we'll say Avenue to Champlin Avenue, and resident permit parking only north side from Arbeth, let's say Avenue to west side dead end.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And just, I think I might have missed it. It's the north and south on Foster Road, correct?
No parking north side, no parking entire south side.
Okay, north and south. Thank you.
Did I characterize that correctly? Terry? No parking south side entire length. No parking north side is where it goes no parking north side from Arbeth to Champlin, and then resident permit parking. So yeah, it's essentially no parking, but there's going to be resident permit parking on a part of it. Am I right on that, Chief?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So we'll vote on that amendment unless any council has any comments. This is just on the change in the Arbeth from road to avenue, which transforms this into a first reading. So I'm going to just call the vote on the amendment. Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Sorry about that. Just UI.
Miss Waller.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. And so now the underlying motion, this is now a first reading as amended, correct, Terry? I'm going to reread this.
If that's considered a substantial change. Then
yeah, I think we should just do it to be safe. Okay, a first reading. This now will become a first reading on a resolution amending the official list of parking restrictions and regulations in the town of Narragansett in accordance with the Narragansett Code of Ordinances to restrict parking on Forster Road as amended herein tonight. Is there a motion for that?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
And is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Okay. Any further discussion, council members, on Foster Road? Mr. Lima?
None.
Mr. Murray?
All set.
Mr. Pugh?
No more discussion.
All right, Miss Lawler?
I'm set.
All right, and anyone from the public?
Nobody from the public.
All right, so all in favor, again, this is the first reading, so we'll see this again in 2 weeks. All in favor as amended, start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray?
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh?
CPU I.
Ms. Lawler?
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 19. Item 19, a motion to read, pass, and adopt as a second reading, a resolution amending the official list of parking restrictions and regulations in the town of Narragansett in accordance with the Narragansett Code of Ordinances to restrict parking on Othmar Street. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Richard Lima, second.
All right. If there's no comments from the council, I know you discussed this 2 weeks ago. All right, so we'll start with calling the vote. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 20 is a motion to approve the purchase of 3 new 2020 Ford Police Utility all-wheel drive vehicles from Colonial Municipal Group in the amount of $103,534.80.
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, discussion. If anyone has questions for the chief, but these are the vehicles that we budgeted for in the capital budget. So I'm going to get initial comments from council members. Any initial comments, Mr. Lima?
No comments.
All right, Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
No comments.
Ms. Lawler.
All set.
All right, anyone from the public? I'm going to have to moderate if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak.
We have one, Stan Wojciechowski.
All right, Stanley, name and address, please.
Yes, Stan Wojciechowski on First Next Road. I would just like to ask if there's any way that we could get, let's say, vehicles with no mileage on them that might be a year older, get that like no, we would say, but they're a year older, and get a price break because we get like last year's model with no miles, and it does the same thing as 2020. Maybe get a 2019 with 0 miles, and we can get experience the savings that way. Is that possible?
Stanley, I know that the chief does sometimes look into that. If he wishes to comment on that, go ahead.
We've done that when are buying a vehicle that's going to be used for the administration. But we're buying a car that's going to be used by the patrol division for active patrol. We buy brand new cars. Yeah, we did use a grant here to reduce the cost of the town by $10,000. That's going to be $93,000 and change.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. Do we have, all right, so are there any final comments on this item from the council, starting with Mr. Lima,
No comments.
Mr. Murray,
No comment.
Mr. Pugh,
No comments.
Ms. Lawler?
No comments.
All right, so again, this is to keep, this is typically, we have a few vehicles every year that we have in capital, and this is pretty common for us. So for people at home, this is a common expense that we can keep our residents safe. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. The next item is from the town clerk. It's a motion to approve a mobile food establishment license application for Lynette Lopez Torres doing business as Halada Tayaki, subject to local and state regulations. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right. Any initial comments from the council? Mr. Lima,
None.
Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
No comments.
Ms. Lawler.
I'm good.
All right. And is there anyone from the public, Mr.?
Nobody from the public.
All right. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 22 is a motion to allow the Coast Guard House Restaurant to use the towers at no cost to conduct dinners twice a week during July and August, with the concept being one seating for no more than 25 to 30 guests. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Discussion on this one, I'm going to turn it over to the sponsor, who is Councilwoman Lawler, who will explain this, and then we'll get initial commentary. Go ahead, Ms. Lawler.
Yeah, thank you. So on June 9th, there was a Zoom call that any member of the council could have attended, as well as area restaurant specific. The Chamber of Commerce and I worked on this along with the town manager. We developed a list of utilizing the town, the Narragansett Chamber email addresses and phone numbers, and merged it with the town, since not everyone is a member of the chamber. And the purpose of the call really was to have a brainstorming session to see what is it, or what was it, that the town could do to help small businesses during the tragic circumstances that we're working under with the COVID. We had a very good conversation. Carol McAfee was on the phone call, and she actually solved some programs for some problems for some restaurant owners right on the spot. But one suggestion that came out was, we have these empty buildings, the Kenny Bungalow, the towers, the North Beach Clubhouse. They're sitting empty because events have been canceled because of the participation not having higher amount than 25 or 50. So I have asked that our town solicitor speak to the town insurance company, the trust, and find out whether or not the event avenues could be given to the opportunity to local restaurants to use at no cost for them, as it will cost the town nothing to actually use, and have them name the town of Narragansett as an additional assurer on their policy. Have them also bring in any bartender that they wish from their premises. So we put this out. I was a little surprised that we didn't have a lot of people that were interested in doing it initially, but I did receive a phone call from the Coast Guard House last week that said they were interested in taking the town up on the offer of having this happen, being able to have some seatings during the week of the last week of July, should this be approved tonight, and then the meeting of August. So again, this is just because of the extreme conditions that businesses are operating in. I know, I think that every one of us in the council want to see all the businesses in town still standing when we get out of this, and we will get out of this. But in an effort to loosen up restrictions, we've done a lot. We've had the outdoor dining. We have the ability to have drinks delivered. So this is one more thing that we can do for our small businesses to give them a helping hand right now. And, you know, the Coast Guard House is saying they want to do it. And hey, if there's anybody else out there right now that would like to, I would love to have it being considered as well, should the council pass this tonight. And, you know, we put this out in an email form. We made some phone calls. All we can do is send the emails out. Whether or not every single restaurant in town opened up their email and read it, I'm not quite sure. So that's another reason why tonight I say that we could maybe offer it to more, so we can help our local businesses more. I know that the Coast Guard House was planning on calling in, and I did receive a message from the Chamber of Commerce. So Matt, if you could call on them, because they also were, you know, keenly involved, and Coast Guard can answer any questions that the council may have after they give their presentation.
All right, great, thank you. That sounds good. We're going to, I'll just do initial comments from the council, and then we'll go to the public. So, Mr. Lima, any initial comments?
Yeah, so again, social media took over a little bit on this, and, you know, again, people didn't have the information right, but yet they're willing to give their input of, you know, how come the Coast Guard House, how come this one, is it offered to everybody? And it is, and it has been, okay? This council, whether you believe it or not, doesn't just go out there and pick somebody because, oh, they're a favorite. Nobody's a favorite. All the businesses here are equal in this town. And we're trying to do whatever we can for any business. Believe me, any business. As you can see, businesses in the North End, they've expanded with the outdoor. South End, the same thing. And any other business that comes up with any idea to try to create some more business activity, be able to function, they can come to this council. They can call the town manager. And look, we'll do whatever we can to help. We're in a time right now, people, that we need to help. So let's try to think of some positive things that we can do to these businesses. Maybe go out and support them. Call out, get some takeout, whatever. But whatever it takes to get our businesses in this town, our small businesses in this town, where they can make a little bit more money. And believe me, they're not making a killing. They're lucky if they're paying their bills. So I really approve of this. I can support this 100%. And I hope that more businesses jump on board. There are other locations in the town that Councilwoman Lawler did mention, and they're available. So if you think you can put an idea together or some type of plan that works for you, then, hey, we're here. We're willing to work. Thank you.
Initial commentary, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. Well, I guess it's for Mark. He's still here. I see he's still here.
Yes, what can I do for you?
So Mark, is this legal?
It's legal if you make it legal. You guys have the authority to allow the town property to be used. As Jill suggested, I spoke to the trust myself regarding liability. And of course, it would be prudent and advisable to make sure that they provided the requisite insurance, much like many of the vendors in town already do. So yes, with approval from the town council, it is legal.
Okay, does consideration need to be added, or you can do it for free?
Well, the town council has the authority to determine whether a fee is going to be charged or not. This is, you know, if you were entering a contract, you're right, consideration would be paramount to the enforceability of it. But in this case, you're just seeking to allow a private business to utilize town property. So I don't see where that would be a concern. You know, I mean, the overall concept of whether you want consideration in return for the space is one thing, but from a legal perspective, I don't see it being an issue in this.
Not a problem. Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, in conception, I don't have a problem with it. It's just that logistically, Coast Guard House is the best one to utilize that space because, you know, because of their close proximity. It'd be difficult for another business to, you know, unless they had, you know, specialized equipment, you know, to move around and move their operation from wherever they're at to the towers. So, Jill, I got a question. What about the towers? Did they pipe in on this, or what was the towers' position?
Great question. I spoke to Dave O, and his first question to me was, well, can I have our staff call Bobby and ask what the town, what we could do to help him out? He was he said, hey, look, it's sitting empty. So why not? We have the chairs, we have the tables. Why not go ahead and help out a local business? It's always helped us.
So do they have exclusivity to this, or if somebody calls up tomorrow and said, yeah, I want to be on a Wednesday?
Well, like I mentioned before, I mean, we can have people call in and say if they're interested in it, and we'll take it on a one-to-one basis, Patrick. I mean, I think right now, you know, the governor put it out there. We need to be creative. So this is a creative approach to try to help our own. So we have this other event, and maybe the other ones would be better for other businesses. But yeah, it's not exclusive to them. They're the only ones who have taken advantage of it. And maybe a lot of it discussed during the call, we're talking about the fact that because of the additional $600 a month until the end of July, that a lot of businesses felt that they could just do takeout, and that was a good thing. So maybe after people are back to work, not having the $600 additional in their unemployment, maybe other restaurants will feel, hey, this is a good idea, that we should go ahead and try something like this too.
So I guess they wanted like 2 days a week, correct?
Yeah, and I know they're on, so they can answer all those questions that you might have, Patrick.
No, that's all. That's fine. But so if somebody calls in and say, well, I want, you know, Thursday and Friday, so that we would just, you know, accommodate them.
Yeah.
Anybody, any business. Okay.
Yeah, I think we come back here to all of us on the Zoom call and say, hey, they want in on this date, and they maybe it's a bungalow, maybe it's North Beach Clubhouse.
Right. Okay. All right. That's all I had.
Mr. Pugh.
All right. So for this concept, you know, I do like it conceptually, just like Patrick said. I liked it when Jill brought it up initially. But it's really all about the detail for this motion. So I do have a few questions regarding those details. So it says in the motion that the Coast Guard House would utilize the towers for 2 days a week for July and August. But, if we're voting on this, those days have to be defined. Otherwise, it isn't, they could just say they want it every Friday and Saturday. And then any other business that wants to use it is going to be locked out of those days. So do we have those days?
That's when we talk to them, they're going to pitch some days to us, Jesse. That's a great question.
You mean tonight, right? Right now?
Mm-hmm. And then we could go ahead and we could take the recommendation and add in those existing days.
So you want to amend this?
We might.
So then if we amend this, wouldn't this have to get pushed back to the next meeting?
Terry?
No.
This is not like a public hearing or an ordinance.
Okay.
So we'd amend it on the spot and then that would be the new motion?
So
Yes.
so the change would just be specifically staying the days of the week.
Days of the week.
Yep.
So when I first heard of this, it sounded like the concept was that it would be available for like a night if a restaurant wanted to use it. The idea of it as a recurring thing for a single specific restaurant was a surprise to me. For that Zoom meeting, because I couldn't make that because it was in the middle of the day, during the week. How many restaurants were attended that?
I don't know how many, and you must know too that this is actually their request to me. So it's up to all of us to discuss whether or not we want to do that. I'm just putting in what they requested because the offer at the Zoom meeting was, give us a call, let us know.
Okay.
And
So
like I don't know how many people actually attended the meeting, because a lot of people, they should be opening up their emails and answering their phones, but if they don't, there's nothing I can do about it. I can only try to get information to them and the chamber as well. And if people don't open their emails, can't do much about it.
Okay. Yeah, because I got word from a few restaurants, 3 or 4, that said they had no idea that this was even an option. So I'm curious if, we didn't do, enough was not done to publicize this. Because the idea that a restaurant owner would have to call a council member to talk about this seems a little bit iffy in terms of process. It feels like we do want to help businesses and restaurants, but we want to help all of them equally, and not just the biggest, most successful restaurant in town.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Why they had to call me and ask me directly. I was the person that organized the Zoom call, so it would make sense, right, for them to pick up the call and say, hey, we're interested in, how do we go about it, which is what happened.
So was this like a joint thing with you and the Chamber of Commerce, or was this just your thing?
Well, I reached out to the chamber because the Chamber of Commerce is the leader of small businesses in our town. And I felt that they would have things that I didn't, such as email addresses and phone numbers. And then they actually chimed in and said, well, let's also talk to the town clerk because she's going to have some names and addresses of people who are not chamber members. So we did the best we could. I mean, was it perfect, Jesse? No, but at least it was something. It was a try. And I think it's a good try for our town and all restaurants. I mean, this is a great thing we're having it tonight because people who maybe didn't open their emails or receive the message that was left for them, maybe they can say, hey, I might want to try that.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely good to get the word out because it wasn't really, put out that widely. So it could be a good thing. I think what we want to make sure is not to lock out other restaurants from having the ability to do it. So that would be my.
I agree.
Thank you.
Jill, do you have anything else?
I have nothing.
So we were all invited to this call. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, we were all invited. I wasn't able to make the call, but I know that this is the type of thing that people do all the time when they're in public service or elected officials, politicians. I mean, that people reach out and then you try to get something to work for them. And these times, I know that a lot of businesses were on the call. I know that some businesses are doing better than others, and a lot of that has to do with logistics. Some have come up with creative solutions where they're using the same space. Some are using it morning, some are using it in the afternoon and night, but it's the same space, so they can use outdoor space. I know in the South End, down in Galilee, there's other people, making have kind of done similar things. One of the problems is we got to use common sense. I mean, in the end, the tower is most likely going to be used by Coast Guard House for obvious reasons. You're not going to have Twin Willows really want to use the tower. I mean, they may come forward and ask for that, but I think that would be somewhat unexpected. So if a restaurant that's near Kennebunk, there's something near Kennebunk, so I'm not anticipating that we're going to see that. And this also, when Jim and I were on the call, during the heat of Corona for about a month and a half to 2 months, the statewide calls, these kind of creative solutions difficult when you have a crowded Main Street and you don't have anything nearby because you can't put people outside. So no two businesses are created equal. So to me, it seems like it seemed commonsensical, and they're not asking for the whole week. They're asking for a couple days. So, and it may or may not work for them. They're just going to try it. So to me, it seems like why we got in this in the first place and years ago, but anyway, that's just my thought. We'll go to the public on this. I'm going to ask our moderator if there is anyone from the public.
There is. First one is Dr. Alba.
All right, name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Yeah, I'm all into supporting small business. In fact, I reached out to Mr. Kevin Durfee, and he says he was contacted, but he's just going to gracefully bow out, and he wishes the Coast Guard House the best, which I thought was very gracious of him. Right? He's a very great businessman. He said he actually didn't have that much staff right now. Right now, I think staff shortages as a result of the $600 bonus that a lot of people are getting for not working, that might change in the foreseeable future. So possibly next month, or even the month after that, maybe some of these restaurants might be getting more staff on board. So that's just a consideration. I also was wondering if maybe an advertisement in the paper or if another outreach to all these managers or owners who have not been contacted one-on-one as a result of, COVID-19. A lot of people are working out at home, or they have, some of them are being, it's not typical times right now. So sometimes these restaurants have reduced hours now, but maybe there's another alternative ways of reaching out to maybe some restaurants that might want to take advantage. Like I said, maybe some announcement in the Times, or just following up with additional phone calls to make sure that all restaurants do hear about this, because I know this is a Zoom meeting, but even I know restaurant owners are very, very busy. A lot of them might not even have the time to even watch a Zoom meeting. So like as Jesse says, we do want to open this to all area restaurants. I think it's great that the town is doing this. I think we should make sure that all area restaurants are aware of this offering, especially since we have multiple places they can operate, such as the Pavilion or Kenny Bungalow. And for those that might have to travel a little longer, maybe they could do 2 consecutive days or 3 consecutive days to make it worth their while. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. But a lot of I wasn't on the call, but my understanding is that the chamber invited everybody, all the businesses onto the call, and there were many of them on it and who weighed in. Jill, is that an unfair characterization?
No, that's true. That's true. There were a couple that were on the call that said that they did not receive messages and they just happened on it. So there were a couple people that were not happy with how it was rolled out. But hey, we're just trying to help them. I mean, and as the governor is constantly saying, we're dealing with new things. I mean, this is a whole new format. It can't be perfect. We're just trying to see what we can do as a town to potentially help out the small businesses in town, keep them afloat.
All right, I'm going to ask if the moderator has anyone else from the public.
Next is Catherine.
All right, Catherine, name and address, please, for the record.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I can't believe it. Okay. First, if we're going to open up the space to a random 25, 35 diners, it's going to have to be sterilized afterwards, the room that's being used and the bathrooms. And I'd like to know who's going to pay for that. But here's an just something else I'm thinking. What exactly has the town done to help the average resident in this town? This is a $900 venue last time I checked for a town resident. Could a town resident come to the town council and say, gee, I'd like to have a little party for my daughter or whatever, and will you waive the fee? This is what I'd like to know. I mean, is there going to be some concomitant benefit also for our average resident?
I think those are good questions, Catherine. And I think, like, for example, the Towers Committee wasn't able to meet. Jill had to go individually to Dave Ousterhout. We're in a situation, as I feel that it lifts, we're going to start to say, well, we need the towers for weddings again. So thank you, Coast Guard House, but it's going to come back to the council and we're going to say, thank
for
you.
Free?
But,
could a resident go there for free, or?
But I think as this plays out, it's we're going to see these restaurants maybe do things like this, and then as the coronavirus lockdown kind of eases, then we're going to go back to normal where people are going to have weddings there, and so then we're going to be back to that. But in the interim, where you have these restrictions on the number of diners that you can have, and they have to be outdoors, this idea came out of that Chamber of Commerce meeting. So, but I think your points, I get your points, but I kind of think once the needs are back to the residents in terms of like having their wedding, because right now you're not able to do that. I have friends who have an August 1st wedding and they're still in play as to whether or not they can actually have it. So I think as that eases up, as we ease off the lockdown, then people are going to say, we're in the town, for example, town council, Towers Committee, land trust is going to say, no, well, the Kinney Bungalow has to go back to having weddings, and so does the Towers. So there's not going to be restaurateurs there. But I hear what you're saying. I get it.
But actually, right now, a person could have a small wedding, 25, 35 people. And I'd like to know, would they have to pay the $900 fee, a town resident? Or are they going to get a freebie also?
Well, if they wanted an exception to the rule, they could ask for it and put it on an agenda. I guess that's.
And what about the issue as far as sterilization of the facilities after these people come in? I mean,
I think we'll refer that.
Let's face it.
We'll refer that to Jim and DPW to sort out with Coast Guard House. Is there another member of the public, Mr. Moderator?
There is. Next is Donna.
All right, name and address, please.
Donna DeChico, 10 Judith Avenue, Narragansett. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Thank you for weighing in on this. Go ahead.
No problem. I just learned about it too. So my only thing is you people the council wants to vote on days to give it to them. Please don't do that, because I have some things booked.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be. I already talked to next door. We need to work on days where it's available.
Right.
I am getting a lot of calls for small weddings. We can have weddings up to 50 people. I have moved a lot of weddings to 2021, of course, because most of our weddings are 150. But we are getting a lot of people who have canceled weddings asking, can they have a wedding? Now, am I not supposed to rent to them now because we're going to be letting all the restaurants in? Or am I still doing my job of renting the towers for weddings?
I still think you're doing your job. I still think you're doing your job. And I think that I'm glad you mentioned that about giving the discretion, because it seems like you have been in communication with the owners of Coast Guard House.
Yes, I have.
And so then that's how this should work. You'll be communicating with them, and then you'll communicate to us and the Towers Committee.
Right.
Listen, so
it might not be the same. It might not be the same 2 nights every week, because I don't always have them. I still have some bookings that we are still taking care of. So.
Right, so we'll give you that discretion.
I don't know how much we're going to be available for every single restaurant in town, because we only have, I'm full up September, full up,
right.
July and August. We may
No, I think they would
come.
I think they'd have to come forward, Donna. And as I said, it would ideally go through the Towers Committee. In this case, we're not meeting, but this is how it should work, Don. The Towers coordinators talking to the next door business. They're working together, not taking the dates from anybody else.
Exactly.
Right? Nobody's getting hurt. This is how we're supposed to work in a community. It's actually
Bob
it's
and I would
actually one of the most
definitely
refreshing,
work
it's
it
one of
out.
the most refreshing conversations I had in a long time sitting up here. I'm
Right.
very happy that you
I
came
just
on.
don't want, I just don't want our hands tied so that when we do
Right.
get a booking that we can't book it. Bob and
agree.
I can work it out.
Yep.
Thank you, Don.
Okay,
Yep. That's
thank
great.
you.
I'm going to ask the moderator if there's anyone else from the public.
Next is Melissa.
Name and address, please, for the record.
I'm Melissa Holcomb, 15 Judith Avenue. I'm very concerned because my most precious asset is the Towers coordinator. And I just want to make sure you guys have a comprehensive sanitation COVID-19 plan. I work in a Montessori school. I am in the process of doing that right now for getting ready for September. I need to make sure that you guys have you have a transient population coming into the Towers, and I need to make sure that you guys are on top of that and that it is the most of utmost importance to you. So please take care of our precious staff at the Towers and make sure that they are safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? I'm going to ask the moderator.
Next is Peg.
All right, name and address, please, for the record.
Peg Fredette, Narragansett Chamber of Commerce, 110 Gibson Avenue, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Hi.
Welcome.
It's getting late, so I'm going to kind of cut to the chase and hopefully answer questions that are out there. I'm sorry that social media got a hold of it because as we know, things are not always accurate as they go around social media.
We all know that, Peg.
Yeah, which is why I stay off it. So I'm not going to get into a social media war with anybody. I'm glad that we're having this discussion now. First of all, let me just say this is a moment in time. I think we all recognize this. We're in this COVID-19 time in our lives, and it changes by the moment. Now, at the time that all this was being discussed, we were in phase 1, looking at phase 2, and looking at the fact that, oh, wow, restaurants can now go to 50%. If anyone has ever been in business, you know that no restaurant goes into business with the goal of being at 50%. That's just not a good business model. So that led to creative thinking. So all of this, folks, was really what came out of what I call, and I'm sure a lot of you have used this phrase, making wine out of lemons. We have a lemon, we have an issue, we have businesses in town that suddenly had to be very creative, or they were stuck. They couldn't go out into their driveways. They couldn't do a lot of things. Okay, so what can we do? At the same time, we had places like the Towers and Kenny Bungalow with all kinds of cancellations because they, in fact, could not have crowds. Now, since all this happened, of course, we've had changes and we've gone into phase 3. So I'm thrilled that weddings are starting to come back at the Towers and functions are starting to come back at Kenny Bungalow. And that, of course, will change a lot of things. And they trump that's their job. That's what they do, is to book their places. That's what they're all about. So should there be areas of time, such as in July and August, where there are some openings, the intent would be if some of our area restaurants want to try something new and have a theme night or a specialty dinner or something like that, we would open that up to them. Now, in terms of how hard it is and all restaurants can't do it, that's absolutely true. A lot of restaurants really just had to, so we had 16 people on the call, and let me just back up. Everybody that is registered in Narragansett as a business, as a restaurant, and everyone with a liquor license not only received one email, they received 2 emails and a reminder. So again, if people have time to spend on Facebook, I'm going to suggest a good business person also spends time on their email. I can't force people to do that. And frankly, we don't have the staff to call up everybody, but we tried, we really did, to reach everyone. And I believe, I'll have to go back into the Narragansett Times, but I believe that I also put it in there, and we put it in our general newsletter. So, you know, you can only bring a horse to the water, and if they don't drink, we can't do anything about that, but we'll continue to try. And hopefully this meeting will help expose this. So the bottom line is that it was a response to try to help, to try to do something. It is open. So just to make this clear, this is open only to Narragansett restaurants, not everybody else, just Narragansett. And the goal was to give them extra space if they needed it. A lot of people, frankly, as it was mentioned before, I think by you, Patrick, or maybe you, Ricky, or Jesse, they don't have the staff. They couldn't even consider it because they didn't have the staff to even run their own restaurants, let alone go someplace else. The other thing is that, in terms of it being difficult, yeah, the towers and Kennebunga is difficult for anybody, including the caterers who do it all the time. The kitchens are small. It has to be a really limited menu. But again, they come to Restaurant Week and they make it happen, and they're all not across the street. So again, if a restaurant wanted to do it, the opportunity was there to grab at it, and it still is there should there be openings. Now, if Donna comes back and says, hey, we're all booked, then, so it goes. So I think this is just one of these things. It's a moment in time. We'll hopefully never have to even think about this again as an option, but that's my job, is to try to stay enthusiastic, try to give my businesses the ideas that they might need, spark some creative thinking. And in this case, it wasn't just the chamber businesses. I felt that, and so did everybody involved in this, that this is for anybody, any business in this town, not just a chamber business. So anyway, that's what I have to say there. So to answer the question about weddings, no, not if somebody, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but someone has a wedding and they get a freebie. This isn't a freebie. This is an opportunity to say, look, our poor restaurants, again, they don't open up a restaurant to be at 50% capacity. And in terms of sterility and COVID-19, they can't function in the restaurant without doing all of that. So that comes part and parcel. They understand what needs to be done. These restaurants are working their butts off to try to do a good job and follow all the rules and regs. And I think we owe them a chance to, respect them and support them in this regard. So this is nothing to take away from the public or, anything like that. This is for the restaurants.
All right, thank you. And to anyone else, I'm going to ask the moderator from the public.
Nobody else from the public.
All right, any final comments from council members, starting with Mr. Lima?
The only comment I have here is, maybe we just amend this so that, again, somewhere in there, it will amend to allow the coordinator of the towers to be able to schedule, whether it's a Coast Guard house or anybody else. And I think if we put that in there and it works, that Donna can make sure the availability is certain days of the week during certain months, then I think it's fine. I mean, on my part, I can't speak for everybody, but I think if we did something on that basis, I think that would be great.
All right, thank you. Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I'm good with this, but the weekends are certainly the high points for restaurants. If another restaurant decided, or 2 or 3 other restaurants found out and want to join Coast Guard House, I think those, high volume nights should be shared, on some type of basis. So that's all I got, but I'm okay with it.
Mr. Pugh.
Are we going to hear from the Coast Guard House, or are we not doing that?
I don't have a hand raised. I don't think. The answer said there's no more hands.
Okay, so it does sound like we will need to amend this. The thing is, if we vote on this as is tonight, then that's 2 weeks until any other business can get approved to do this. If we're approving specifically the Coast Guard House, then we're gonna have to do the same thing within 2 weeks. So they're gonna lose that 2 weeks there. So I agree with Ricky. We do some sort of amendment where we let the Towers Committee manage the application process and do it on a rotating basis so everybody gets a chance. And if Coast Guard's the only one who wants to go for it, then they, you know, it's theirs. But to lock them in without getting this marketed fully doesn't seem right. So if we can amend it, then I'll be voting for it as well.
All right, Jill, Miss Lawler.
Yeah, I like the idea. Donna brought up some really great points. And if we could amend it so that we could have Donna work with the Coast Guard House, I'd like to see anybody else come back forward and just not have Donna make council decisions about approving additional establishments. Personally, I'd want to probably approve anybody that wants to come through, but I think it needs to come to the council. So if we want to make a motion to add in that that Donna DeChico work with the owners of the Coast Guard House, just to let everybody know, when they mentioned days of the week to me, they did not talk about weekends, Patrick. They were talking about weekdays, during the weekdays, and having themed dinners. I saw their name up here before. I know that Bob was working tonight, so maybe he had to pop off and go handle some type of emergency. I don't know, but they weren't looking for the weekends. But I totally agree. We can't have, if there's other people asking for it, we can't have it only be one. But I think it's going to be more difficult for other people to use the towers than the Coast Guard. It's just such an easy walk for them up. But certainly, if others want to, or the bungalow or the North Beach Clubhouse, that'd be great. So,
Yeah, Elizabeth's hand is up. She wants to chime in about the Coast Guard House. We do have a representative there.
Mr. Holland, do you have somebody with a hand raised?
Yep, Elizabeth.
My Brannick.
oh, good.
I am on Alyssa's computer.
Oh, okay.
That's why it says Alyssa at the Coast Guard House. It's Bob Leonard. How's everybody this evening?
Good.
Good.
Seafood.
Seafood, friends, sea views, sea hope.
Welcome. Yeah.
What's up?
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Yes, I can answer. I am at work. Any and all questions, but it was a thought of ours. You know, the Towers is a special place, and to do maybe a themed dinner, a time or two a week, I think would be nice. Of course, the Towers takes precedent. I have spoken with them, and I would work through their parameters. If it's not available on a certain day, it's not available. We pride ourselves in trying to be.
And the motion right now actually gives that discretion. It doesn't put in certain night. It's twice a week through the end of August. So, and we've gotten from you and from the Towers coordinator that you're working together. And I think then we'll see how this goes for the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know? And that feedback will be helpful to us when other restaurants that come forward, and you don't know if on Donna DeChico's part, she starts to get more and more requests for small weddings. So I think the motion as it stands has the discretion for you guys to work together. Anybody, thank you, Mr. Leonard. Anything else?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Is there anyone else, Mr. Holland?
Yeah, we have Peg's hands back up.
She already spoke on it, I think.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a note that it's also Daisy at the Kenny Bungalow. That, again, if someone were interested, coordination would be needed with her as it would be with Donna at the Towers. Sorry, should have mentioned that.
That's
Thank
good. And that would be with the North Beach Clubhouse as well. Those are both hers, Daisy's.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, thank you, everyone. So all in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
I'm going to make an amendment before we vote. I'm going to make an amendment. Why are we only voting on the Coast Guard House? Why does it have to come back for approval if another business wants to do it?
Because they haven't requested it. We don't have a request from another business.
Okay, so, but most businesses didn't even know about it. There was 16 total people in the Zoom, total. That's staff as well. There's about 8 businesses on that Zoom. So if we want to open up to businesses, let's open it up to all businesses. The Towers could take applications. This is the time to vote. We only have another month and a month and 10 days before September.
I think we can verbally commit. We can have, if another restaurant steps up tomorrow or the next day, I think we can have an emergency meeting and just do an up and down quick vote. I think everybody's on board with that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we can't wait 2 weeks. We can't wait
No.
for the meeting every 2 weeks because, you know, we got
Yeah,
what, 2.5
Let's let the towers.
meetings, the summer's over.
I'm fine with letting the coordinator of the towers actually, if a restaurant comes in that is in town and wants to do next week on a Tuesday night, and the Coast Guard House or there's no event on Tuesday night, I mean, why wouldn't we allow Donna to coordinate that? I mean, again, are we gonna have 10 special meetings in the next 4 days? So, you know,
I'm good with that too.
I just think we need to open this door, and we have, you know, Donna sits in a position where, you know, she coordinates at towers. They do an unbelievable job. I'm not gonna second guess her decision of what restaurant she allows in, what she does, and how she coordinates it. I think in these times, we have to give her the upper hand on that. And, you know, if there's any issues, then I'm sure she'll contact us and we can go from there. But there may be 4 or 5 restaurants tonight that say, geez, maybe we'd like to do a couple nights. And again, that's what this is all about. This was not just to open up the avenue for one restaurant at all. It wasn't. But one restaurant did step up to the plate. And I'm glad they did, because it brought out the discussion. And now it brings out the different points that we have as a council to say, hey, who knows? Twin Willows may have an event that they were brushing off. And now if there's 30 people in that event and they want to go there on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, whatever, they could do it. So if you want to amend it and have the coordinator of the towers be able to handle who goes in and who doesn't, I mean, I think that, my opinion, for me, that would be a great way to move this forward and not have too much involvement with all these special meetings.
Yep. I agree.
The only problem with that is,
I move we have the towers coordinator coordinate restaurant events for the rest of the summer.
Or how about this? A motion to allow Narragansett restaurants to use the towers at no cost to conduct dinners on a weekly basis. Basically the same thing we have, but just change Coast Guard House to Narragansett restaurants to be managed by the tower coordinator.
There you go. Perfect.
Second.
all right, there's a motion and a second for an amendment. The problem with that is we're putting a lot of onus on the director of the towers coordinator. That's really not the responsibility I think she wants to take on. She's taking on a unique thing right here. And I think to step in and then say, okay, we're going to open this to restaurants that haven't even come forward. If they come forward in the next few days, they come forward and they can come to the council. I just think that to vote on something that's theoretical, you know, that nobody else had asked for in the call, that I wasn't on, but I kind of just trust how Jill and Peg and the Coast Guard House and everybody went through this. I just think it was done in good faith, and that's how I feel. So
the whole point
I think we're not understanding how the real world works. Like, it's going to be a lot. Donna's trying to juggle. She's trying to juggle. I've served on the Towers Committee for 7 years. I'm pretty familiar with how it works. So I feel like it's unfair to just put this on her, as we're going to delegate this responsibility to her as a town council. It's really not what she signed up for. It's not her role. It's a misunderstanding of how the town government and the committees work. I just think that they've come forward. They brought us a unique one-off, which we can do again in a week or two if somebody else comes forward, because they don't have to come together with a plan. I mean, someone else is going to have to come together. This has obviously been planned out. This wasn't. So.
Is Donna still on the call? Is Donna, are you still out there? Dan?
All right.
Unmute. Yes, I'm here.
There we go.
So Donna,
I'm here.
I mean, how do you feel, Donna, overall, if, again, I mean, I know you take the calls on the weddings and the parties and all that. Do you feel comfortable that if the restaurants were contacting you, that I'm sure that you're capable of putting them all in an order when they call and saying, look, these are the dates we have. This is where I can put you in. Are you comfortable with that? Or would you rather have us as a council approve them here after discussing it with you.
I can take the calls and I can do it, but what I would do is list them. I would ask them what nights they want, what I have available, I would offer to them. And then I think I would call the council and say, this restaurant called me. Is this okay with you? I have no problem with that. It's not a
But
big,
you it needs council approval. Is the
Well, how do we-
Not to
Yeah.
dump it on it. It's not to dump it on that.
It doesn't need council. Well, that's
No,
our
no,
It's
decision.
not fair. It's
if
not
it
fair.
doesn't, then I can just tell you, who has applied and when they're coming, however you want to do it. It's really not gonna be that long, because once September hits, then we're kind of back into our,
Right.
hopefully we're keeping fingers crossed that we're back into our, but if we're not, then we just go on. It's whatever
I
you
don't-
guys think I can
Right.
do. So if you want me to take it, list them and plug them into whatever dates I have available, I can do that. I can
Mhm.
also do that and call you and tell you who has contacted me that wants a date. And then if you guys need to approve it, you can approve it and let me know. It's
I
whichever
don't
way you
think
want
we
to go.
need, I agree with Jesse. I don't think we need council approval.
And Rick.
To do this, it should be open up to all restaurants, Narragansett restaurants, not
Mhm.
wait 2 weeks, then approve it, and then the summer's over. So,
Yeah, and I don't think you're gonna have 20 restaurants jump in on this.
oh, I agree. You may
It's a
not have
very-
anybody, but you can't
Yeah.
exclusively do the Coast Guard with not leaving it open for other restaurants.
Right.
So
Well,
that was never the intention, but so the one thing that I think that we need to make sure that they have to be in good standing, right, with the town
Absolutely.
Exactly,
license.
exactly.
So that is.
They have to have license, and they would even, now, normally anybody that comes in, like a caterer or whatnot, they come in with their insurance or everything. Are we requesting that they provide, I have to see their certificate of insurance to operate?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's gonna be just like as if I was having the caterer come in.
Right.
Yep.
And you're
I can
also
do that.
gonna, and Donna, you're also gonna have, as we had one caller, you're gonna also have to let them know that they're gonna have to provide, or whether it's we do it or the town manager does it. I mean, I don't know what the legal side of this is, but it has to be cleaned properly so that, again, everything is disinfected to what the standards are for COVID-19. I mean, there
They're
are,
gonna have to leave it the same way they found it. We
Right,
will have
right.
it perfectly clean when they come.
Right.
It's gonna have to be left that way,
so,
which is what all of our caterers do. There's a
right.
very
right.
strict cleaning process, so.
If Donna, if you're fine with it, I mean, my thing is, if there's another 3 or 4 restaurants that want to jump on board and they think they want to do something between now and the next council meeting, I just don't think that we need a bunch of special meetings. That's just me.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yep, I agree too.
I think we should add in the verbiage that they must be in good standing with the town. We don't want to.
That's fine.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that's fine.
Okay,
That's a given.
Right. All right. Well, somebody read off that motion and let's move forward.
Terry, do you have it?
and you all have my number. You can call me anytime. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Bye-bye.
Jill, since it's your motion, do you want to do the amendment?
Sure. So the town council allow any Narragansett restaurant to use the towers at no cost to conduct dinners during July and August. The concept being of seating of no more than 25 to 30 guests, as long as they are in good standing with liquor license and other town. Terry, what's the exact word to put in for that? Good standing with the town?
Subject to state and local restrictions.
Local.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Second.
All right, any further discussion on that? All right, so all in favor of that amendment, start with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix abstained, amendment approved 4-0. And now on the underlying motion, all in favor, any, All in favor? Is there any further discussion on the underlying motion? Mr. Lima,
No.
Mr. Murray,
Sorry, what? I'm sorry. Say that again. I'm clicking
any
on-
further discussion?
No.
Mr. Pugh,
Nope.
Ms. Waller?
All set.
All right, so, all in favor of that, that'll be, starting with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Waller,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 23 is a motion. Give me one second. A motion to approve, ratify, and confirm the enactment of an emergency order issued by the town manager designated all no parking zones as tow-away zones. Is there a motion?
So moved, Jill Lawler.
Is there a second?
Second, Richard Lima.
All right, any initial commentary from the council? Mr. Lima?
None.
Actually, before I do that, Jim, can you do a brief summary of this for us? I know you did some of it at the beginning.
Yes, this stems from,
Go ahead.
first of all, it's authorized under the town, chapter 74 of the ordinances. This stemmed from the collaborative efforts that I discussed at the beginning of the meeting between Narragansett, other coastal communities, with state police, DEM, the governor's office, and Department of Health, in an effort to reduce crowding at the beaches. The governor had lowered the capacity at the beach parking lots from 75% to 25%, which was a 50% reduction in just 1 week. The unintended consequence was that people were willfully, intentionally just disobeying all the parking rules and regulations in most of the coastal communities in Washington County. And they were just pouring into the community. And with that said, we would put this order in effect and notified the council and spoke with the solicitor about it. There has been some unrelated to this specific ordinances. People have been talking on social media about Rose Nullman Park and how the town closed that. That is not true. The town did not close that. The Family Trust closed that because of concerns for liability issues. The two things that were changed is the no parking zones were converted into tow zones. And one stretch of Ocean Road, which went from Pilgrim, if you're heading southbound, it would be on your left-hand side from Pilgrim all the way down to Rose Nullman, just one side, because what people were doing is a lot of residences there, and they parked completely on the street, blocking the lane, and then they would park on the other side, and vehicles couldn't get through. So we just prohibited on one side of the street, whereas the right-hand side, if you're traveling southbound, is fully open for parking. We had a couple of signage issues, a little bit of confusion, but they're correcting that. But that was the purpose of it, and we anticipate that through the summer, this could be a problem until we're over the hump on this.
Good, and this is designated as tow-away zone, right? Which many weren't already. All right, any initial commentary from the council, Mr. Lima,
No, I have none.
Mr. Murray?
Yeah, Jim, what do you think? It's just till the end of the summer, most likely, huh?
It's entered initially for approve, ratify, confirm as until further notice. The council at any time could change that and say, do it now. I would guess we would probably carry it through till Labor Day. I mean,
Right.
the example of compliance would be this weekend where there were over 500 tickets issued. I mean, that's a lot in the community.
Understood. Thank you.
Really been following the guidelines as far as capacity, and they shut it down. I've been down there. I was down there the day that the gentleman went under water. I've been going down every day. I see people waiting in line, separated from each other, waiting to go back in until people leave the beach. So it is working. It's a slow process for everyone. It's new to everyone.
Understood.
Is that it, Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. Pugh?
Quick question for the town manager. The one part of the executive order, the Ocean Road strip from Pilgrim to Rose Nullman. So that's just going to be on the one side. I just want to confirm though with you, because today those signs are up on both sides. So I just want to confirm that, you know, we're in agreement, everybody.
Yeah. Absolutely. There was a little bit of a communication gap, and the section, if the best way to describe it's really the east northeast strip. So the best way to describe it is from Pilgrim southbound. If you're traveling southbound from Pilgrim to Rose Nolman Park, that's the affected area. That signage will be absolutely corrected first thing in the morning. I reached out to Mike DeChico while we're in the meeting today. And we're going to take care of that first thing in the morning. For this, some signage is correct. There's a few that were left behind. And we also think some people maybe pulled them up and moved them around because they're on stakes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Welcome. Ms. Lawler.
I'm good.
All right, and just, you said we had 500 tickets and those are parking tickets, correct, Tim?
That's correct.
All right, I'm gonna see if there's anybody who is out from the public. I'm gonna ask our moderator if there's anybody who would like to comment.
First one is Michael.
All right, please state your name and address for the record.
Michael Millen Jr., 65 Tupelo Trail.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So as we can see, overcrowding and illegal parking has been a huge issue due to limited access with our current situation to local beaches. We're seeing this both with in-state and out-of-state cars filling up neighborhood streets, business lots, etc. I'm in full favor of updating these no parking zones into tow-away zones, as well as increasing the fines. As of right now, our current fines are simply viewed as the cost of going to the beach, and it's hardly a deterrent. Furthermore, I propose increasing the fines even further than the initial to 200, specifically as a seasonal summer month, and wouldn't be opposed to revisiting this every year, not just for our current situation. But with any policy, it all comes down to the enforcement. How are these areas going to be patrolled any different than they currently are? How frequently are these vehicles going to be towed if they are in violation? Who's doing the towing? There's a lot of questions that can go into this. And if we do not enforce a good policy, then its value is only on paper and not in practice. There needs to be strict and frequent enforcement of these parking violations if we're going to see any kind of change. At the same time, these changes are being made to regulate violators. We should also be exploring the other parking situations that we're seeing pop up in town instead of just doing patchwork, one issue at a time. For example, something like a 2-hour parking limit in areas near Boone Street or the pier could prevent beachgoers from clogging access to our restaurants, shops, our parks. But obviously, before we'd get into that, we'd want to work in conjunction with the local businesses to see if maybe they have an alternative solution to that. And it'd be irresponsible to do anything without their input. But now is not time just to react, but we need to start being proactive if we're going to make a positive change in this town. Thank you for your time and consideration on this matter.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
Next is Catherine.
Catherine, state your name and address for the record.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. I don't really think that you quite understood what Mr. Abedisian said. The bottom line is there isn't parking on the street for town residents. If you live in the north or south end of town, access to the pier is severely limited. I have in-laws that live in the north end. They used to like to come and take a ride down and sit at the seawall. They can't do that now. There has to be some streets or some areas of parking on the streets that are set aside for town residents. Because right now it's like whoever gets to the pier the earliest, boom, they're there. They clog the space all day and into the night. Well, at 5 o'clock, they pour in from the state beach and they clog up the spaces. And here we are, residents I can walk to the beach, but somebody in the north or south end of town cannot walk to the pier. They cannot even use the playground at Thompson Park. I go by there every single day and that lot is filled with beachgoers. Ditto Sprague Park. I've taken pictures. I was at Sprague Park last weekend. The entire parking lot was full. There wasn't a soul in the playground, not a soul no one sitting under the pavilion, nobody there. Ditto Thompson Park, because those spaces are clogged up with beachgoers. Those two places have to be posted and tagged and towed. But really, we have to really think about putting aside some spaces on the public streets for town residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
There is a person with the Samsung Galaxy again.
What was that, Dan?
There is one.
Okay, name and address, please.
Cell phone one again.
Oh, I guess that's me again. Sorry. I have my email address in there, so it's kind of weird. Casey Montanari, 21 Checkerberry Trail, Narragansett, Rhode Island.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to address the parking concerns as well. As I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware, I have a business down on Boone Street. I watch the parking disaster that goes on here all the time. And when we passed this new parking thing that we were doing, I was under the impression that what we were doing was increasing the fees for the 2-hour parking that are actually in the pier, as opposed to blocking other parking throughout town. Those spots are huge for the local residents that want to go to the beach, or for people that want to utilize our restaurants and retail spaces. And I just feel like something should be done more along the lines of actually enforcing the parking there and enhancing the violations, whether it be increasing the fees and making those tow-away zones, whatever needs to get done. But the parking in the pier is an absolute disaster. Everyone else that's spoken has summed it up just fine. But I watch the stuff and it's a good time too. And I know this is probably not relevant exactly to what we're talking about, but the Boone Street Park, we need to address the parking there. I have a business directly across the street. I watch these people. The parking that is at the park should be designated for the park. It should be 2 or 3 hour parking that says violators will be towed at owner's expense, so that these parents can take their kids to the park and utilize it, so that kids that want to play basketball can play basketball over there. Our town hosts in a normal year back-to-back basketball games there every single night, 4 or 5 nights a week, and with no parking. And at the height of the game changeover, there's at least 100 cars that are coming in and out of there trying to find parking without enough parking spots. So this is a huge problem in our town. And it goes to what Chief Corrigan was saying earlier, whether it's Hazard Ave or whether it's Boone Street, whatever it may be, all of these parking issues are real safety concerns in our neighborhoods. And again, that's why I came out publicly and spoke against Peg's proposal and Jill's proposal to shut down Boone Street and do dining there, because it's not safe for the community as a whole.
Is there anyone else from the public?
Nope, that's it.
All right, so any final comments from the council on this? I'm going to start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, I have none.
Mr. Murray.
All set.
Mr. Pugh.
No comments.
Lawler.
Just to add one thing to the owner of the bike shops, just recent remarks. Peg and I actually had the fire marshal, Kevin went down there to Boone Street to take a look at options. So the town was never going to have Boone Street cut off so there would be any type of safety concerns whatsoever. He went down there, he came back with some ideas that we could offer to be able to have Boone Street be closed in a certain way. But the restaurants we spoke to were not interested in doing it. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that safety was at the top mind of this going forward, and both the chief and the fire marshal were into this, and the fire marshal went down and made a plan that would be safe. That's all.
Yeah, that idea that you and Peg had come up with was an idea from my perspective. It never came to town council agenda.
No.
It was something that, and that happens all the time. I think people need to also realize that people shoot ideas out all the time, and residents come up with ideas and you meet up with them, and sometimes some ideas go nowhere and they never come to a council agenda. They never go before a committee. But that's, I heard briefly about that, but it was never a formal proposal that to close down a street. So I just think that's important. In terms of these restrictions, I do think as a council, we're going to want to, when the corona starts to subside, think about what we want to do with parking in terms of tow away versus an increased ticketing and all that. This was done in a much more emergency manner. So, but because it's an emergency, I don't think it's going to last forever. We're approving and ratifying it, but I do think if one of the council members, especially has strong feelings about this, probably should talk with Jim about it offline and maybe say, as this subsides, is there something that we want to do differently in a more permanent way in the pier? Because we did hear several people express their concerns on that tonight. Again, this is an emergency nature. Jim, do you have anything else?
No, I do not. That pretty much sums it up.
Okay, all in favor, we'll start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. And now we've reached open forum public comment portion of the meeting. I asked, these are for any individual speaking on any topic of concern in the town. And we ask that people remain restricted to 3 minutes. So I'm going to ask our moderator if there's anybody who wishes to speak.
Yep, the first one is the same person who just spoke in the last item.
Okay,
Thank you.
please state your name and address for the record, please.
Casey Montanari, 21 Checkerberry Trail. I just, since I wasn't able to finish and Jill rebutted what I had to say, I just wanted to take a minute and go back to that. I believe the entire town council, as well as the town manager, received my email addressing my concerns for the shutting down of Boone Street for dining. I brought up what I think are valid concerns for the public safety, for parking, for public health, for a lot of different things. The response I received from both Jill and Peg, more Peg, told me to not rally the people and mobilize the residents because there was no need for that. But yet 3 days later, it's been brought to my attention that there was an email sent out to every other business owner on Boone Street, making them aware of a meeting to discuss the same thing that I was told was not an issue. So to say that this is the way that it was is not the way that it was. And I'm not doing what I do is not for selfish reasons. The conditions or the issues that I raised were for public health and for my community as a whole. It's the same reason I just shut down my business because I had an employee that had a sore throat. I was under no obligation to shut my business down. I did that because I thought that's what's in the best interest of our community. And I really just think we all need to stop fighting about all these things and really find ways to work together. And I'm not trying to attack Jill or trying to attack Peg, but to say the things that are being said is a little bit misleading. So and I would appreciate if somebody wants to rebut what I'm saying, that I at least be given the opportunity to speak again. Thank you.
All right, who do we have next? Dan?
Next is Stanley Wojciechowski.
Go ahead, Stanley.
Yes, Stan Wojciechowski. I just want to bring up 3 items. One is majority. People abusing the voter initiative. Well, we have less than 6,000 residents forcing an increase in taxes for 15,000 people. You know, I just don't like to hear that. And I know that's nothing we can do about it, but it's a minority group that's forcing a tax increase on over 15,000 residents on this library issue. It aggravates me somewhat. The other thing is $841,000 for employees on a library. I can see $1 million spent on library employees going forward. And I know you all committed to that, funding it. And so we have $1 million bill even before we start a building of some sort. And then there's another issue. I was told by someone out of state that donations. Why doesn't the library, why can't the library go after free money, donations, all donations. Don't go after the town for tax money. Go after all these millionaires you're talking about and ask them all to give 100, 200,000, whatever. Let donations be the source of funds rather than demanding monies from the residents, especially at this tough time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stanley.
Matt, excuse me?
Yes.
It's 11 o'clock, so if the council wants to continue beyond this point in 15-minute increments, the council needs to vote on that.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. I didn't realize it was 11. Thank you. So we're going to, if there's a motion to, basically our meeting ends at 11 under our ordinances, but we can extend it 15 minutes. If there's a motion to extend the meeting or if there's a motion to adjourn, I'll entertain that from the council.
Do we have any people with their hand up to still speak? Dan?
Dan?
We do. 3 more.
How many, Dan?
3.
3 more?
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion made by Jesse, seconded by Patrick. All in favor, starting with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Trustee Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye, for 15 minutes, right, Matt?
That's right.
Yep.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Who do we have next, Mr. Holland?
Dr. Alba?
Go ahead, Mr. Alba. Your name and
Yes.
address for the record, please.
Dr. Al Alba, thank you, Matt. 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Yes, we're all going to have, we're all listening to the will of the voters in the upcoming election. Hopefully, there's not going to be any ambiguity. We're all going to be able to hear the will of the people. And I'm sure the vote will be that we are going to be supporting this library, which will be helping everyone. Because I feel even if you do not use the library, it will help you. It'll help our town. It'll help our property values. And I just think it's of benefit to everyone in society. So I just can't understand why people are so adamant against the library. And I have a question for the council. I heard, and I know this, that you all visited the old library for a walkthrough. And I don't know if the library board was with you, but I know they're supposed to oversee any expansion or any reviews of the existing library. In fact, the town solicitor said that was a requirement. So if the library board was not with you, I question why were they not with you? And if they cannot give you the okay on what might even be proposed for an expansion, why is that even being considered right now? So, okay, thank you very much. Bye now. Good night.
Thank you. That's the moderator who we have next.
Next is Ted DeStefano.
Name and address, please. All right, go on to the next person.
Next one is Peg.
Excuse
All right.
me, could you hear me last?
Peg,
I'm
go
sorry, were you able to hear me?
We got you
Go
now.
ahead.
Hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. I was extremely disappointed with Council President Matthew Mannix's comments at a recent council meeting which implicated the Superior Court Judge Lanphier and the Congressman David Cicilline in the lawsuit outcome against Mannix et al. Ray the Library. I then sought legal advice and filed a complaint with the State Supreme Court Attorney's Disciplinary Board. I copied Congressman Cicilline with my complaint. I will now read the response of the Attorney's Disciplinary Board. Dear Mr. DeStefano, this office has received your correspondence relating to the public comments made by Attorney Matthew Mannix regarding Judge Lanphier and his recent decision in the case of Susan Cicilline Bonanno versus Matthew Mannix et al. We have also reviewed the comments made by Attorney Mannix. You correctly identify Rule 8.2 of the Rules of Professional Conduct and the provisions relating to attorney comments about judges. However, that rule must be considered along with the First Amendment to the Constitution, which guarantees freedom of speech. Our review of Attorney Mannix's comments lead us to believe that his comments, while certainly objectionable, fall within the range of comments protected by the First Amendment. I have discussed this matter with Judge Lanphier. He agrees that these comments are not actionable. Accordingly, this office will not be opening a complaint on the information you provided. This does not mean that this office agrees with or condones Attorney Mannix's comments. Rather, it is a recognition that living in a free society means that all public officials are subject to criticism, whether warranted or not. Thank you very much for bringing this matter to our attention. Very truly yours, David Curtin. One final thing, I consulted with my attorney and he clarified the fact that though public officials cannot sue for libel or slander, private individuals like myself certainly have the right to sue. Thank you and good night.
Who do we have next? Dan?
Next is Peg.
Peg, name and address, please, for the record.
Peg Fredette, 110 Gibson Avenue, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Thank you, folks, for extending. I'm sure you're all very tired, and I appreciate the extra effort you're putting in. I'm sorry to have to do a rebuttal, but rather than have a Facebook war or anything crazy like that, I'd rather just get the facts out on the table. So I do want to respond to the owner of Bike Stop. So Casey, yes, I did get your email, and thank you very much for expressing your opinion. And that's what it was an opinion. But as I mentioned to you, it was way premature because an idea is not a plan. And at the stage that we are talking about it, that was simply an idea. As a matter of fact, it's still an idea. And I can't even believe we're talking about Boone Street tonight because it's clearly nothing that's being presented as a plan. So I tried to make that clear, and perhaps I missed the mark and didn't do that. And I certainly knew exactly where you stood on the issue. However, there are other people, of course, other businesses in the Boone Street area, and they had not yet weighed in. So rather than drag you all through that again, because I knew what your opinion was, I solicited the opinion of the other businesses who also matter in this regard. So anyway, it's still an idea. That's my goal, is to feed businesses ideas and let the businesses take ideas from there. But the most important thing is that the idea wasn't even floated, wasn't even a nibble of an idea until the fire department was first contacted in terms of safety. So I want to make that perfectly clear that that was the number one thing that occurred first, because had the answer been, nope, not going to happen, not a safe way, there would have been no further discussion. So thank you again for your opinion. I've had the opinions of the entire area right now, and we'll see where it goes. So thank you very much. I appreciate you guys giving us a little more time.
Thank you. Who do we have next? I'm asking our moderator.
Next is Carleen Town.
Name and address, please, for the record.
Carleen, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Carleen Town, 240 Wood Hill Road. After watching the June 15th Town Council meeting and listening to Matt rant over the Superior Court ruling that Susan Cicilline Bonanno's initiative was valid, and hearing the disparaging remarks made by Matt towards Judge Lanphier, I was both appalled and embarrassed for the people of Narragansett. After all, that is who Matt is supposed to be representing. So I wrote to Judge Lanphier to tell him what Matt had said. If you will recall, Matt said, quote, The recent decision by the judge in Superior Court letting this initiative go forward, which essentially hamstrings, I assume he meant the town, and shows a misunderstanding of municipal law. Was Matt really suggesting that Judge Lanphier does not understand municipal law? When Matt continued with, I think in the state of Rhode Island, I think it is interesting that the plaintiff in that decision, whose brother is one of 2 congressmen in this state, we've seen what happens in this state time and time again. Was he really suggesting that Judge Lanphier was unduly influenced by politics rather than ruling on the case based on judicial precedent? Matt continued his diatribes against Judge Lanphier's decision in an article written in the Narragansett Times on June 19, 2020. After I sent my letter to Judge Lanphier, I was advised that I should also send the same information to the disciplinary board of the Rhode Island Supreme Court. I received almost the same reply that Ted DeStefano received, it says the Rule 8.2 must be considered along with the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, which guarantees freedom of speech. Our review of Attorney Mannix's comments leads us to believe that his comments, while certainly objectionable, fall within the range of comments protected by the First Amendment. And it goes on to say, this does not mean that this office condones or agrees with Attorney Mannix's comments. Rather, it is a recognition that living in a free society means that all public officials are subject to criticism, whether warranted or not. As a final note, I would like to say that it is interesting that Matt gets to say what he wants, when he wants, and about whomever he wants, because he is protected by our First Amendment. But he continually denies us that right here at town council meetings when he refuses to recognize the raised hands of people in the audience, when he refuses to abide by the council's own rules and procedures for the Narragansett Town Council meetings. Hope you're watching and listening, Senate District 36. Thank you.
Who do we have next?
Next is Lori Kelly.
Yes, thank you. Lori Kelly, 25 Wildfield Farm Road. Again, it's like Sue Amoroso said, I believe at the last meeting, we feel like we're in Groundhog Day. So tonight, Ricky said, we're at a time when we need to help, Ricky Lima. So Ricky, Jill, Matt, help us reinstate the budget for the library. While you're casting about, helping here a small business here or there and coming up with these schemes, you are disregarding people who rely on their salary, their pensions, and yes, their health care in a time of COVID. Again, for those of you at home who haven't been paying attention, these 3 people cut the library budget from $841 to $400,000. And they claim we have to watch our pennies while they approve $600,000 for a fire truck and $120,000 tonight for replacing police vehicles. Now, again, that was in their capital budget. But last week we've had on the agenda money that was in the capital budget for the library to make building alterations to make the staff and the patrons safe in a time of COVID. This was voted down. This includes tempered glass for sneeze guards. Now, I'm sure we've retrofitted the town hall. I have not seen agenda items on that. Tonight we learned without an agenda item, just casually, that 3 people have been hired to be greeters at the town hall. While you are slashing library employees and forcing us to furlough people. Is there something wrong with this? Yes, there is. There is no crisis that means the library should be punished at all costs because of some, I don't know, spitefulness, because there is no other reason for this. The schools, I don't think, have been forced into this situation. I know for a fact they got an increase in this year's budget, but the library, again, has been slashed. Ricky and Jill think, oh, they have a new plan for a building. There will be no building plan if there is no library. And let me be clear, 400,000 allocation to the town means no library. We are all agreed on this. So if you want to help someone, help small businesses, how about helping the people who have 47 years of service, 35 years of service, 31 years of service to the town, and not cut their health care during this crisis? Please reconsider and reinstate our budget. Thank you.
Yeah, let me speak on this, Lori, while you just spoke. Remember, you're the one that left $181,000 up on Olis's desk. Not us. You did. 181,000. Now you expect the taxpayers to reach in their pocket and pull out the 181 that you left behind. You also paid somebody for fundraising $93,975. And then a position that has a healthcare package that nobody else actively working in the town has, that costs the taxpayers $6,000 more a year. Over the last 10, 12 years, 70 some thousand. So if you take that 181, you take the 177 that you are going to receive from the state, OLIS, because we did instate a level funded budget, and you take the 93,000 and you take the 6,000, you will have a total of $857,975. So replenish the 181 that you didn't take, not my mistake, your mistake. Put the 93,000 back in that you should have taken out of fundraising, and get the 6,000 and figure out that everybody should be on the same healthcare plan. That's what you should be doing. Don't tell us that we're wasting taxpayers' dollars. We're not. And that library will not close. If it closes, it's because of you. We'll make sure that there's enough money to fund the library, but go get the money that you left on the table. Thank you.
I'd like to make
Is
a
there,
turn. It's 11:17.
what was that, Jill?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. It's 11:17.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second that motion.
All right, all in favor, starting with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Patrick Murray, no.
Mr. Pugh. Mr. Pugh,
I was on mute. Do we still have people's hands up?
there's,
Yes,
there
four hands.
are, I believe, yes.
Four
Aye or nay? Is it yes or no?
Four
Yes,
hands. What's up, Matt?
Aye or nay? What's your vote? Motion to adjourn.
I'm gonna vote no.
Okay, all right, Miss Lawler.
Aye.
Aye. Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 3-2. The meeting is adjourned. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.